Chapter 888. Many spectators could not help but guess what Long Chen and the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor were discussing. No matter how they discussed, there would only be one outcome for Long Chen. That was because the Nine Yang Celestial Tribe members were all over Qin Mountain. Long Chen was alone. However, there were 3 Celestial Emperors and 30,000 Great Emperors on Qin Mountain. All of them were Great Perfection Great Emperors. Many Great Emperors had even been crowned. Even an ordinary late-stage Celestial Emperor would find it difficult to escape from such a lineup. With Long Chen's strength, not to mention a few Celestial Emperors, even 10,000 Great Perfection Great Emperors and many crowned Great Emperors would be able to annihilate him. The Immeasurable Emperor is notorious. It's best if he dies in the Nine Yang Celestial Tribe today. To think that the Immeasurable Monarch would have such a day. Did he really think that a corpse would allow him to leave Qin Mountain safely? The surroundings were filled with curses directed at the Immeasurable Monarch. The Immeasurable Emperor, who was hidden in the crowd, nodded repeatedly. He, who had transformed into a woman, even rushed to the front of the crowd and cursed more vigorously than anyone else. Some people even thought that the Immeasurable Emperor had dug up their ancestral graves. The Immeasurable Emperor stood in front of the crowd and stared at Long Chen, cursing him to die here. He was relieved to see so many people from the Nine Yang Celestial Tribe around him. Inside the array formation, the corpse in Long Chen's hand was gradually being restrained and landed on the ground in front of him. He stared at the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor and smiled faintly. "Have you thought it through?" The Nine Yang Celestial Emperor's eyes flashed. He said coldly, "Are you serious? You're just a 6th-stage Celestial Emperor. What right do you have to say such big words? As a monk, I don't lie. As long as you swear a blood oath to the undying Tao Law, I'll fulfill my promise. If you can't do it, it won't be too late for you to kill me." The Nine Yang Celestial Emperor looked at the Immeasurable Emperor in front of him in a daze. He really did not understand why Long Chen dared to make such a promise. A mid-stage Celestial Emperor actually dared to promise to crown him and guarantee that it would be no less than 3C of reincarnation. After pondering for a moment, Emperor Zhou Yang snorted coldly and said, "I agree. Return the corpse to me. Don't blame me for being ruthless when the time comes." As Emperor Nine Yang spoke, he made a blood oath to the inextinguishable Tao Law. In his eyes, it was Immeasurable Emperor's promise. Of course. Even if Long Chen did it, he wouldn't lose out at all. It was worth it for him to be able to become a crowned emperor and retrieve his ancestor's corpse. Although Emperor Nine Yang served the Black Blood Emperor, his reputation was not small. The Black Blood Emperor was ordered to go to the Void Soul Mountain, but he was not ordered to go. The corpse in Long Chen's hands landed in the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor's hands. He could not help but shake his head and laugh bitterly. He thought to himself that he was an idiot. He actually believed the Immeasurable Emperor's nonsense. The Immeasurable Emperor that Long Chen had transformed into smiled kindly. He clasped his hands together and said, "Benefactor, you can remove the formation now. I'll go with you to the Nine Yang Celestial Clan." The Nine Yang Celestial Emperor carefully wrapped the corpse in his divine power. He bowed a few times before respectfully carrying it on his back. He could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard Long Chen's words. He snorted and said, "How do you know that the Emperor's immeasurable body is not with me? Let's go. I'll let you die in a more dignified manner." The Nine Yang Celestial Emperor said. He then signaled to the other Celestial Emperor and removed the formation around them. "He's out. He's out. This guy has really been executed. His corpse is already in the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor's hands. What other trump cards does he have to survive? He must be afraid now. I think we'll be able to see his torture in a few days. He'll definitely suffer a fate worse than death if he goes to the Nine Yang Celestial Clan's tomb." After the formation was removed, the noisy discussions of the people around them filled the sky. Even though they were far away, they could still hear them clearly. Only the real Immeasurable Emperor suddenly quieted down. He did not know why, but an extremely bad feeling rose in his heart. If Longchen really left this clan alive, the immeasurable emperor would probably become the Nine Yang Celestial clan's #1 target. He really did not want to see such a situation. Otherwise, he would not have waited until Longchen to steal this tomb. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Longchen followed behind the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor with his palms together and an easygoing expression. The surrounding Nine Yang Celestial clan members were filled with murderous intent as they stared at Longchen. If the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor did not stand in front with his halberd, he would probably be torn apart in a moment. Long Yi, why don't you kill this bastard? Even if he dies 100 times, it won't be enough to vent the hatred in your heart. A Nine Yang Celestial Emperor powerhouse glared fiercely at Longchen. The Nine Yang Celestial Emperor shook his head and replied, "Don't worry. Let him follow me back to the clan. He only has one path in the end." After saying that, the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor led Longchen to the Nine Yang Celestial clan's territory. Many Nine Yang Celestial clan members were very confused, but they could only snort coldly and follow behind. While everyone was running, Longchen suddenly turned around and clasped his palms together. He said loudly, "Everyone, remember this face of mine. In the future, evil spirits might be born in your ancestral tombs. This penniless monk will definitely be there as soon as possible. Perhaps this penniless monk will be able to walk through all the anti-tombs in the North Foot territory in this lifetime." Seeing that Longchen and the Nine Yang Celestial Emperor had disappeared into the horizon, Longchen's voice reached everyone's ears. Everyone was instantly stunned on the spot and was actually speechless for a moment. Of course. At this moment, in everyone's eyes, he was completely the immeasurable emperor. The immeasurable emperor stood in front of the crowd and was almost completely stunned on the spot. He even saw Longchen glancing at him with a faint smile before he left. After a brief moment of shock and speechlessness, a huge uproar broke out in the crowd. The immeasurable emperor is openly challenging the entire North Foot territory. He's really arrogant to the extreme. Shameless person. This person isn't afraid of losing all his virtue. He actually did such an outrageous act. Even if he can walk out of the Nine Yang Celestial clan today, we'll think of a way to kill him. This person has a bad reputation. Quickly spread the news that he's in the Nine Yang Celestial clan. At this moment, the immeasurable emperor felt blood rush up his chest and almost coughed it out. Chapter 889. Within the Nine Yang Divine Clan's territory, the 9 mountain peaks were like giant 9-legged cauldrons, and they were like stars surrounding the moon, surrounding a lofty palace in the center. The palace was porcelain white and had a majestic aura. The Nine Yang Divine Clan inherited the Earth Origin Divine Clan and had a deep heritage. Is that the person who dared to rob our clan's ancestors' tomb? How audacious! If this person doesn't die, where will our clan's face be? Since we've already captured him, what are we waiting for? Let's just kill him. When Longchen, Emperor Nine Yang, and the others returned, many people looked over and cursed loudly. Longchen's expression did not change. He really felt that he was the immeasurable emperor. Ever since he changed his face, he felt that he had started to become shameless. Emperor Nine Yang suppressed the restless people around him. Seeing that the crowd was on the verge of exploding, he explained to the 2 emperors behind him and the many peak emperor realm cultivators. When they heard this, their expressions became strange, but they soon burst into laughter. "Men, disperse." One of the emperors stared at Longchen as if he was an idiot and shouted to the people around him, "Bring all the source beasts raised by the clan to the martial arts arena. I want to feed them with this person's flesh. How can there be such an ignorant person in this world? Does he think he's an emperor?" The 2 emperors quickly led the group of Emperor Nine Yang to disperse. The people around them only calmed down when they heard that Longchen was going to die. Many people began to think of ways to kill Longchen. They had no pity for such a grave robber. On the other side, Emperor Nine Yang could not help but snort coldly and said to Longchen, "Is there a need to try? If you give up now, I'll let you die with dignity." Longchen looked at his surroundings and turned to Emperor Jiu Yang. He smiled and said, "Everyone is prepared for my death. If I complete it, what will you do, benefactor? Why don't you use the halberd in your hand as a wager? You want to obtain this halberd? Dream on." Emperor Jiuyang glanced at the halberd in his hand and did not say anything else. He led Longchen straight to the center of the vast palace. After a few tosses and turns, Nine Yang Monarch and Longchen came to a secret room. Nine Yang Monarch sent everyone away. He stared at Longchen and said, "The thing you want is right here." As soon as he finished speaking, 7 rays of light shot out from his right hand and landed on the wall beside him. The wall trembled, and a stream of colorful light appeared. It turned out to be an entire palm, with the thumb and pinky missing. When Longchen saw this, his entire aura shook, and he almost cried out in shock. He never thought that his luck would be so good today. The Nine Yang Emperor had the entire palm of the Emperor Lord's body, and it just so happened to match what Longchen had obtained from the immeasurable Emperor. If he could obtain this item from the Nine Yang Emperor, Longchen's entire right hand would undergo an unprecedented transformation. The increase in his cultivation level would definitely surpass the increase of the 2 finger bones from before. The Nine Yang Emperor frowned. Although Longchen's mind had only been distracted for an instant, he had still clearly captured everything. He looked at the Emperor Lord's body in the secret compartment on the wall and thought, could this person really be able to comprehend the Emperor Lord's body? Then, he shook his head. The lines on this incomplete palm were like 3 vast mountains. If one immersed their mind into it, it would be as if they were in another celestial land. Countless fine lines intertwined with this obscure Tao and logic, as if they were compatible with the ancient sacred divine world's inextinguishable law of Tao. Ever since the Nine Yang Emperor obtained this item, he had not gained anything from it. He had even almost gotten lost in the lines on the palm. If you want to comprehend this item, you have to be at least a venerable emperor. It's impossible for an emperor to gain anything substantial, the Nine Yang Emperor murmured. What he said was not wrong. The immeasurable emperor had 2 broken fingers, which were much weaker than this palm. Even so, the Nine Yang Emperor could not comprehend it at all. He could only rely on it to verify the array formation. The Nine Yang Emperor took a deep breath and stared at Longchen. He said coldly, "It's your turn. Let me see how you can make me a crowned emperor." Longchen stared at the Nine Yang Emperor. He had already calmed down. However, he was not in a hurry to make a move. His gaze landed on the halberd in the Nine Yang Emperor's right hand. He said again, "How about we bet something else? If you lose, this halberd will be mine too. You can't take this item away. Your life is already the wager. Why should I bet with you?" The Nine Yang Emperor sneered and suddenly threw the halberd at Longchen. The halberd pierced through the air, but it only flew for a few meters before disappearing without a trace. "Stop stalling. Hurry up and do it." The Nine Yang Emperor was very impatient. Longchen shook his head and walked around the Nine Yang Emperor thoughtfully. In fact, he was communicating with the Emperor's remnant soul in his heart. Dozens of breaths passed. Longchen's voice suddenly became sharp. He said seriously, "Meditate on the 5 hearts and meditate on the heart. Hide your divine power in the soul." Longchen, who had turned into the immeasurable emperor, seemed to have turned into another person at that moment. His cold words were filled with an unquestionable meaning. As soon as he finished speaking, the Nine Yang Emperor felt as though his mind had started to sink. He could not help but sit down with his legs crossed. The moment he sat down, he broke out in a cold sweat and his divine power surged. Longchen said again, "Open your heart. Otherwise, how can I crown you? Since you swore on the undying Tao law, you have to abide by your oath." The Nine Yang Emperor panted heavily. His clothes were stuck to his body. Longchen's words had captured his attention in an instant. Although he managed to react in an instant, it still caused him to feel lingering fear. If Longchen had been a few levels higher, that instant would have been enough to determine the winner. The Nine Yang Emperor stared at Longchen until he felt that Longchen did not have the slightest murderous intent. He snorted coldly and said, "I want to see what other tricks you have." The Nine-Yang Emperor did not know that the person crowning him was not Long Chen but the former realm master of the ancient sacred divine world, the ancient sacred Emperor Lord. He also did not know that today's gamble would completely change his life. Outside the vast palace in the center of the Nine-Yang divine clan's land, more and more experts gathered. There was no lack of Emperor Lords among them. Some of these Emperor Lords were from the Nine-Yang divine clan while others were from other clans. An Emperor Lord from another clan with a cold blade on his back walked to the front and asked the Nine-Yang divine clan's Emperor Lord, "What exactly is the Nine-Yang Emperor doing? Since the immeasurable Emperor has been captured, just kill him." Chapter 890. Coronation. When the news of this bet spread, everyone was speechless. Soon after, the hall roared with laughter. Among the foreign imperial emperors who came, 3 or 4 of them were from the deviant divine tribe. The reason why they rushed over immediately was because they heard about the immeasurable emperor. These people all had deep enmity with the immeasurable emperor. Hence, they knew the immeasurable emperor very well. He was only a mid-stage imperial emperor. He relied entirely on his array formation, various Dharma artifacts, and disguise techniques to travel in the North Foot realm. If not for that, he would have died a few hundred times. Hurry up and ask Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang to bring him out. That damn bald donkey's every word is true. Don't be fooled by him. Damn bald donkey stole our tribe's Dharma artifact vault. I must take his life today no matter what. If we kill the immeasurable emperor today, the Feather Divine Tribe will give 30,000 origin stones to the Nine-Yang Divine Tribe. In a secret chamber in the main hall. Long Chen's hands sent streaks of light into Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang's body like silk threads. His right thumb and pinky seemed to be communicating with heaven and earth, transforming into thousands of Dharma laws. His hands moved faster and faster. Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang, who was sitting cross-legged below him, had completely lost all his guard. Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang's entire body seemed to be bathed in a peaceful light. He felt an unprecedented calmness, as if his entire body was starting to merge with the ancient sacred divine world. He could even clearly feel an illusory wall shattering, opening up a whole new world for him. At this moment, it was as if time was rushing past him at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. When he opened his eyes again, Long Chen was standing in front of a wall. The secret compartment on the wall had been opened, and the Imperial Emperor's body had disappeared without a trace. Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang woke up, and Long Chen slowly turned around. He stared at Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang and said, "How is it? Did I win this bet?" When Imperial Emperor Nine-Yang heard that, streaks of divine power surged behind him like a tsunami, more than 10 times stronger than before. Imperial Emperor 9 Seas of Reincarnation, a total of 5 Seas of Reincarnation. A crowned Imperial Emperor. At this moment, Emperor Nine-Yang had completely become a crowned Emperor Lord. The goal of the Imperial Emperor realm was to become an emperor, and the coronation was the cornerstone of becoming an emperor. Even if one's innate talent was unparalleled in the world and one's fortune was comparable to the heavens and the earth, if no one crowned you, you would still end up depressed. Ancient sacred divine world. The word coronation permeated through all realms. Be it god kings, god emperors, or even god emperors were no exception. Emperor Nine-Yang's shoulders trembled uncontrollably. He felt that the past few days were like a dream. A monarch had actually crowned him. This feeling was like being smashed on the head by a supreme magic weapon while walking on the road. The feelings in his heart were indescribable. Poor monk. Senior is definitely not the immeasurable emperor that the outside world is rumored to be. Can you let me see your true appearance? Emperor Nine-Yang's attitude towards Long Chen had undergone a 180-degree change. In his eyes, Long Chen was undoubtedly a venerable sovereign. Since the establishment of order in the sacred god world, only those above the emperor realm could be crowned as emperor monarchs. There were no exceptions. This was neither a battle skill nor a divine ability. It was the comprehension of heaven and earth and the integration of the inextinguishable Tao law. Long Chen revealed a faint smile and did not say much. He only said indifferently, "Since the wager has been completed, then can I walk out of the Nine Yang divine clan's territory?" Emperor Nine Yang did not continue asking. He only nodded in agreement. He gestured to Long Chen and opened the secret room's array formation. Long Chen nodded and took the lead to walk out of the secret room. The moment he walked out of the secret room, he heard a clamor of curses. Numerous murderous gazes landed on him. Even though Long Chen was prepared for this, he almost did not react in time. At this very moment, there were a total of 23 monarchs standing outside the Nine Yang divine clan's main hall. Among them, there were even a few late-stage monarchs. Long Chen did not doubt that there were probably hundreds of thousands of monarchs waiting for him outside the Nine Yang divine clan's perimeter. To be precise, they were waiting to kill the immeasurable emperor. He truly felt deep veneration for the immeasurable emperor in this life. It was truly a miracle that he was still alive after provoking the hatred of so many powerhouses of the same realm. In reality, Long Chen did not know. At least 1/3 of these people were here because of what he had said before entering the Nine Yang divine clan. Of course, this was also inseparable from the immeasurable emperor's actions. Only the heavens knew when the immeasurable emperor would find their ancestors' resting place. He's finally out. Today, we'll definitely cut him into 1,000 pieces. Immeasurable bastard, do you still remember how you took advantage of my breakthrough in the Slaying Blade Divine Clan's territory to steal 5 of my life weapons? The Nine Yang Divine Clan is finally going to take revenge today. Our clan's tomb has completely collapsed. You took the 13 formation core artifacts inside. Today, I'll definitely torture you ruthlessly. This person is extremely shameless and cunning. We can't let him go today. Countless angry voices covered the entire Nine Yang Divine Clan's territory. Many of the Nine Yang Divine Clan members were also filled with righteous indignation. The Nine Yang Divine Clan's tomb had been robbed. This time, they had let so many people into the clan's territory to let everyone see the immeasurable emperor die here and avenge their humiliation. A few Nine Yang Divine Clan emperors immediately took the lead and charged toward Long Chen. Their faces were full of mockery. However, just as they were about to charge in front of Long Chen, they heard a loud roar. "Everyone, back off!" As soon as the voice fell, rolling divine light surged out as if it was solid. The few of them stopped in their tracks. They saw that the Nine Yang Divine Clan Emperor was already standing in front of Long Chen, blocking them. The leader of the Divine Clan Emperors was immediately shocked. He asked in confusion, "Long Yi, what are you doing? Since this person has already come out, why aren't you killing him? Given what this person has done, it's enough for him to die 10,000 times. It's fine that you made a bet with him, but why are you still protecting him now?" The few of them were puzzled. The crowd around them was riled up. Long Chen was still smiling faintly. He did not say a word. He knew that the Nine Yang Divine Clan Emperor would protect him no matter what. That was because the Sea of Reincarnation behind him was personally supported by Long Chen. The Nine Yang Divine Clan Emperor, Qiu Changyi, took a deep breath. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Since I'm blocking all of you, is there a need to explain the reason?" The few Nine Yang Divine Clan Emperors looked at each other. Their faces were filled with confusion. After a long while, the leader of the Divine Clan Emperors asked with a strange expression, "You're saying that you lost the bet?" The Nine Yang Divine Clan Emperor nodded. His meaning was obvious. Chapter 891. Divine light filled the sky. The many monarchs and countless 9 central Divine Clan clansmen were all stunned on the spot. Sea of Reincarnation. Emperor Nine Yang had been crowned, and there were 5 seas of reincarnation behind him. These 5 seas of reincarnation were different from the ones that appeared after an emperor was crowned. Each sea of reincarnation seemed to be connected to the heavens and earth, emitting a terrifying pressure that made people feel suffocated. Boom! Under the immense pressure, the few monarchs couldn't help but retreat 100 meters. They stared at Monarch Nine Yang in shock. Emperor Nine Yang had really been crowned. What's going on? Changya, how did you get crowned? Which emperor crowned you? An old man from the Nine Yang divine clan was so excited that his entire body was trembling. Qiu Changya's aptitude in the Nine Yang divine clan was extremely high, and his divine clan origin was extremely rich, but he had never been crowned by the Black Blood Emperor. Now that he had been crowned, he would definitely have a chance to break through to the Emperor realm. The birth of an emperor was enough for the entire Nine Yang divine clan to rise in the North Foot territory. Everyone stared at Emperor Nine Yang with burning eyes, and they were all extremely excited. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded him. The imperial emperors of the other clans looked at each other with envious expressions. After a long while, the Nine Yang divine clan members finally calmed down. Emperor Nine Yang even said directly, "I lost this bet." Before Emperor Nine Yang could finish, he was interrupted by the crowd. Many outsiders saw the Nine Yang divine clan members disperse and shouted, "Where did that immeasurable old thief go? No matter what, we can't let him go." The immeasurable emperor's disappearance instantly caused the crowd to boil. Emperor Nine Yang also looked back and realized that Long Chen, who was originally behind him, had disappeared without a trace. However, he had no intention of looking for this immeasurable emperor at this moment. Rumble! A beam of divine light shot up from the northernmost peak into the sky. Weapon Tribute Peak. Who dares to barge into the Weapon Tribute Peak? A Nine Yang divine clan elder immediately shouted. Emperor Nine Yang was first stunned, then his expression changed drastically as he flew away. The surrounding imperial emperors also followed closely behind. When everyone arrived at the Weapon Sacrifice Peak of the Nine Peaks, they were all stunned. The huge altar that stretched across the entire mountain peak had actually been crushed into powder. Everyone from the Nine Yang God clan was completely dumbfounded. As for the imperial emperors from the other clans who had rushed over, they didn't know what was here and started asking each other. 9 Firmament Yang Suppressing Halberd. Someone actually managed to take away the 9 Firmament Yang Suppressing Halberd. A Nine Yang divine clan monarch was both furious and surprised. 9 Firmament Halberd. Everyone's eyes flickered when they heard this, and their expressions changed drastically. Rumor has it that only members of the Nine Yang divine clan can get close to the Nine Yang divine halberd, and within the entire Nine Yang divine clan, only the Nine Yang divine emperor can take it away from the altar. Now that Emperor Jiu Yang is still here, who is the one who took away the Jiu Yang halberd? Who else could it be? It must be the missing immeasurable emperor. Everyone, what are you waiting for? That immeasurable emperor must have just left the Nine Yang God clan. We can't let the immeasurable emperor escape this time. In a short period of time, many outsiders left the Nine Yang divine clan. The Nine Yang divine clan monarchs moved out together, all of them furious. The 9 Firmament Yang halberd was the Nine Yang divine clan's oldest ancestral weapon. Although this artifact was damaged, it still possessed great power and could not fall into the hands of outsiders. The Nine Yang divine clan mobilized almost all of their core forces, but just as they were about to leave the Nine Yang divine clan, they were stopped by the Nine Yang divine emperor. Many Nine Yang divine clan monarchs were anxious, and the leader even shouted, "Long night, what else do you want to do? That immeasurable emperor must be killed by our Nine Yang divine clan. The 9 Firmament Yang halberd must not fall into the hands of outsiders." The Nine Yang divine emperor shook his head and said, "It's useless. Even if you go out now, you won't be able to find him. He's not the immeasurable emperor at all." On the other side, Long Chen had already left the Nine Yang divine clan, and he had already recovered his original appearance. At this moment, an overwhelming number of people rushed out of the Nine Yang divine clan, wanting to kill the immeasurable emperor. Long Chen looked at the experts flying in the sky one after another, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. He muttered, "Immeasurable monarch, this time, we're even. The emperor's body I obtained this time, and with the help of the 9 Firmament Yang halberd, it shouldn't be difficult to obtain the third emperor's body that Shu San mentioned. Master, will I have a chance to step into the emperor realm now?" The emperor's remnant soul in his mind replied, "That will depend on the third body, but I'm really lucky this time. This palm and the 2 phalanx I obtained previously can be fused into a complete palm. If you're lucky, you should be able to directly reach the peak of the Emperor Realm. Below the Emperor Realm, you're the king. Longchen walked straight into the wilderness. On the 10th day, he stopped and suddenly turned around, saying, "Come out. You've been following me for so long. Do you have anything to say?" After that, the 9 Yang Divine Emperors slowly descended from the clouds 100 meters away from Longchen. He stared at Longchen, as if trying to see through him, but in the end, it was to no avail. He was not surprised that the 9 Yang Divine Emperor had chased after him. After all, he was personally crowned by Longchen, and the two of them already had an inseparable connection. This connection came from the ancient sacred divine world and the inextinguishable law of Tao, and it was the same for Mo Manue. The 9 Yang Divine Emperor spoke first. "Senior, can you take out the 9 Firmament Yang halberd for me to take a look?" Longchen nodded, and with a wave of his hand, the 9 Firmament Yang halberd appeared in his right hand. The halberd was like a rainbow, and when the 9 Yang Divine Emperor saw it, he was completely stunned. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. "This is one of the strongest ancestral weapons of my clan. For so many years, no outsider has been able to get close to it. Even I can only use its power for a short period of time. But now, this halberd has completely acknowledged you." Longchen could not help but smile when he heard this. He said, "It was wrong of me to steal the corpses in your clan's tomb, but I crowned you as an emperor. This is not a loss for you, right? As for this halberd, I can give you another opportunity." The 9 Yang Divine Emperor shook his head and said, "This halberd can only collect dust in my clan. I'm not here today for this item, but to see Senior's true appearance." After that, the 9 Yang Divine Emperor turned to leave. Longchen could not help but nod when he saw this. The 9 Yang Divine Emperor had already recognized him as the Emperor Realm, but was unwilling to accept his favor. He was indeed an upright person. Chapter 892. 10 days later. The immeasurable emperor had already cursed Longchen's 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. Within 10 days, he had been hunted down by 4 groups of people. When did that brat completely imprint my origin energy and leave it outside the 9 Yang God Clan's array formation? The immeasurable emperor was speechless. Because of this origin energy, no matter how he disguised himself, he could not escape from the pursuit of people from all sides. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Rumble. Just as he finished his sentence, several rays of divine light flattened the mountain he was on. On the other side, Longchen wandered in the wilderness and found that there were many people from the God Clan searching this place. They were all looking for the immeasurable emperor. This made him feel helpless. If he wanted to merge with the immeasurable emperor's body, he had to find another place. 9 Moons and 9 Suns Lake, Qin Mountain. Longchen's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of the safest place. He turned and headed towards Qin Mountain again. More than 10 days later, he arrived at Qin Mountain again. However, there were no more people coming and going on Qin Mountain. Even the patrols of the 9 Yang God Clan had disappeared without a trace. After all, the tomb had collapsed and there was no longer any value in this place. Almost everyone near the 9 Yang God Clan is chasing after the immeasurable emperor. With the 9 Yang God Clan as the center, many places are filled with spies. On the contrary, the places near the 9 Yang God Clan are much quieter. Longchen nodded as he looked at the peaceful Qin Mountain. Longchen concealed his aura and rushed up Qin Mountain again. However, when he arrived near the collapsed tomb, he saw a familiar figure. The woman stood on top of the collapsed tomb. Her long dress was like a waterfall, outlining her perfect curves. Zhan Lanue. Longchen frowned. He did not expect to meet Zhan Lanue here. After all, he was here as the immeasurable emperor. "Why are you here?" Longchen concealed his aura so Zhan Lanue didn't notice Longchen's presence. Longchen took the initiative to ask. Zhan Lanue suddenly turned around. She was surprised and happy at the same time. She did not expect to meet Longchen here. "I finally found you." Longchen was puzzled and asked, Why are you looking for me so urgently? Jean Manuel's figure flashed and flew towards Long Chen. When he stood in front of Long Chen, he waved his hand and a ray of godly radiance flew out. Long Chen looked over and saw Jean Lanua holding a seal in her hand. Jean Lanua's eyes were like water as she stared at Long Chen and said, "This is a replica of the war god Dharma seal. Even though it is not as powerful as the war god Dharma seal, it contains some of the techniques of heaven's mandate cultivators and can be used once every 10 days. With this item, you can contact my father as long as you are in the North Foot territory." My father sent a message back from the Void Soul Mountain. The human Tao Emperor has given a death order and sent 3 Great Perfection Imperial Emperors back. Each of them has been crowned by him personally. Hearing this, Long Chen frowned and felt that time was running out. 3 Great Perfection Imperial Emperors and all of them have been crowned. Any one of them could kill him easily. He didn't expect Jean Lanua to look for him because of this. "How long have you been looking for me just to give me this item?" Long Chen couldn't help but ask Jean Lanua. Jean Lanua was startled and her face blushed for some reason. But after a while, she snorted and said, "I haven't been looking for you for long. After all, I brought you out from the abandoned land and I am indebted to you. Of course, I can't watch you die. Just keep this item." Jean Lanua said and stuffed the replica of the war god Dharma seal into Long Chen's hand. Long Chen looked at the war god Dharma seal in his hand and was stunned. He wasn't a fledgling. How could he not know about this? But now, he didn't know how to answer. Jean Lanua's eyes flashed with disappointment and returned to her usual self. She smiled and said, "This item is just a replica. I won't give it to you for free. I heard that the 9 Moons and 9 Suns Lake is very magical. But it's crowded today. Why don't you and I take a look?" Before Long Chen could say anything, Jean Lanua had already rushed to the top of Qin Mountain. The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul's voice appeared in Long Chen's ears. "Humph, I told you to listen to me. Knock her out and push her to do the deed. Why would there be so many things between a man and a woman? It's so troublesome." Long Chen smiled bitterly. The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul's view on the matter between a man and a woman was really simple. Recalling that he once said that he used 1,000 years to bond a woman by his side to cultivate feelings, Long Chen was speechless. Long Chen didn't answer the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul and followed Jean Lanua up Qin Mountain. At the top of Qin Mountain, looking from top to bottom, even Long Chen couldn't help but be surprised. 9 rivers were intersecting at the top of the mountain. On the top of the mountain, there weren't only the 2 of them. There were also 4 to 5 couples cuddling between the flowers and plants. It seemed like not everyone was interested in the immeasurable emperor. Long Chen stood beside Jean Lanua and looked around. He was also looking forward to the 9 Moons and 9 Suns Lake scenery. Jean Lanua didn't say anything and just stood there. The 2 of them looked completely out of place with the men and women around them who were all lovey-dovey. The surrounding men and women also noticed the couple and began to tease their partners. "Pfft, that guy is really like the time when you chased me. He's just a dummy. A dummy. It seems like you were also attracted to him back then. In the blink of an eye, this is already our 4th time on Qin Mountain. Don't worry. When they see the scenery later, they will definitely be attracted to it. Beautiful scenery, water will naturally form a canal." Although their voices were soft, Long Chen and Jean Lanua heard them clearly. Jean Lanua's cheeks were already blushing. Long Chen couldn't help but cough. However, the 2 of them still didn't say a word. Sunrise and sunset. Dew wetted the mountain stream. Every sunrise was filled with frost and clouds. It was like a fairyland. Day after day, another day after another. Finally, one day, when the sun was setting, the mountain was covered in fog and frost covered all the trees and grass. There were even ice strips forming on the branches of the ancient trees. On the top of Qin Mountain, the scattered couples suddenly stood up. Their faces were filled with happiness and anticipation. Their left and right hands were tightly clasped together. Selflessness was nothing compared to parental affection. Love was nothing compared to love. Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua stood up at the same time and looked down from the top of the mountain. The two of them were less than a meter apart, but they didn't cuddle up like other couples. The warm color of the setting sun gradually sank below the horizon. Chapter 893. The 9 streams cut through the entire Qin mountain at a perfect angle like zither strings. The lights intertwined, the fog sealed the mountain, the wind stirred the fog and froze the grass and trees. Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua were stunned. The last ray of sunlight at sunset was refracted by the streams and shone in all directions. The monotonous world and the ordinary Qin mountain were covered with thousands of colors in an instant. The 9 streams were like a river of treasures, dazzling and turbulent. In the sea of fog. At the top of Mount Qin, where the dazzling splendor of the 9 streams intersected, it turned into a mirage that was reflected in the fog in the sky. 9th Moon Lake. Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua finally knew why this place was called such a strange name. It was night, but it was as bright as day. The lights at the intersection of the 9 streams were like 9 dazzling suns hanging in the sky. A new moon was reflected in the streams, sinking into the sea of fog again. The entire sea of fog was like a huge pool of water, with 9 blazing suns and 9 crescent moons rising and falling in 9 multicolored rivers of stars. At this moment, all the men and women at the peak of Qin Mountain felt like they were in a paradise. The men and women snuggled up to each other, making out with each other. Long Chen suddenly felt movement from Zhang Lanhua beside him, and subconsciously turned his head to the right. Buzz. When he turned his head, his mind went blank. Zhang Lanhua's beautiful face was less than a finger away from him. A whiff of virgin fragrance entered Long Chen's nose, making his blood boil and his breathing heavy. Long Chen was about to speak, but Zhang Lanhua suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him into her embrace. The two of them hugged each other tightly. Long Chen felt the soft and bouncy body in his embrace, making his blood boil. Red lips like fire, arms around his neck. Long Chen lost all his defenses at this moment. Behind the two of them, 9 dazzling suns and a new moon rose and fell, the fog was rolling and changing, it was inexplicably beautiful. At this moment, every man and woman on the peak of the mountain were like this, intimately intimate. 9th Moon Lake. The spectacle began and ended in less than an hour. When the fog dissipated, the top of Mount Qin also gradually darkened. In the dark night, Zhang Lanhua was still in Long Chen's embrace. Long Chen couldn't help but smile as he recalled the day when he met Zhang Lanhua outside the remnant land. Follow me back to the Battle Kingdom, I will ask my father and uncle to protect your life. Zhang Lanhua's eyes were like torches as she stared at Long Chen. Previously, I used the war god Dharma imprint to deduce the people sent by the human Tao sovereign. One of them can accurately track your location. If you don't follow me back to the warring states, they will inevitably find you. At that time, you will die. Long Chen frowned when he heard that. If what Zhang Lanhua said was true, then it would be impossible for him to merge with the Sovereign Lord's body in the Qin Mountain. With the arrival of a few perfected late-stage sovereign emperors, his current cultivation level was probably not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Long Chen thought to himself. It seemed that the human Tao Emperor was determined to capture him at all costs this time. How could Long Chen not understand Zhang Lanhua's intentions? Let me see where they are first. Long Chen shook his head. If this was true, then the only place he could go was the Battle Kingdom. If the defensive array of the Battle Kingdom was strengthened, it might be able to last until he merged with the Sovereign Lord's body. Long Chen took out the replica of the war god Dharma imprint that Zhang Lanhua gave him and infused his divine energy into it. The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul looked at the war god Dharma imprint with disdain and said indifferently, "Such a clumsy replica. It's obviously a magic tool, but it still wants to use heavenly fortune. If it wasn't for the fact that I am afraid you will waste your time cultivating heavenly fortune, I would have made you one of the best in heavenly fortune in 3 years." Long Chen's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He must find a way to make the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul impart the heavenly fortune art to him. Heavenly fortune cultivators cultivated heavenly fortune, it was one of the most unique occupations in the ancient Saint Divine world. This group of people did not cultivate their physical bodies, they only cultivated the Tao of soul divination, using the inextinguishable Tao law to spy on the world. Those who cultivated to the transformative realm could see everything in the world and understand the past, present, and future. While Longchen was thinking, the god of war god Dharma imprint turned into threads and merged with the surrounding space. The threads seemed to have merged with the laws of the universe. With a thought from Longchen, the threads started drawing, and many scenes appeared. In front of them, there were 3 great perfection monarchs flying in the sky. One of them was covered in blood as if he was casting some kind of secret technique. That's the North Peak Island. If they come at full speed, they will reach here in 15 days at most. Zhang Lanua's face turned ugly when she saw this. 15 days. Longchen's face turned gloomy. 15 days, even if he started to merge with the Monarch Lord's body, it was still far from enough. The Monarch Lord's remnant soul said, "Follow this little girl back to the Battle Kingdom. Think of a way to reinforce the array formation. It won't be a problem to hold them off for a month. Once you merge with the Palm, you will definitely reach the Great Perfection Monarch realm. Then, everything will be solved." Longchen nodded. It seemed like this was the only way now. Time is of the essence. Zhang Lanua saw that Longchen had agreed and rushed down the Qin mountain. The two of them did not take a single step. When they reached the stronghold under Monarch Nine Yang's jurisdiction, Zhang Lanua called back all the great perfection monarchs that came with her and rushed back to the Battle Kingdom. The few great perfection monarchs looked at each other when they saw Zhang Lanua holding onto Longchen's arm. The few leaders were smart enough to keep a distance from the two of them. Young mistress won't be bringing Longchen back to the Battle Kingdom, right? Last time, Monarch Zhang Quan let him go because he wanted to cut ties with him. The human Dao monarch is determined to get this person. If we bring him back to the Battle Kingdom, it will cause chaos. This is going to be troublesome. Young mistress really likes this guy? Everyone murmured. Although they knew that Longchen was talented, if they were to get involved with Longchen, the Battle Kingdom would never have peace. Halfway through the journey, Zhang Lanua suddenly asked, "How many wives do you have in your family?" Longchen's body stiffened. He did not expect Zhang Lanua to ask such a question. Zhang Lanua saw that Longchen did not reply. After a while, she asked again, "Then are you willing to become my Dao companion?" For a moment, Longchen actually did not know how to answer. Chapter 894. Along the way, Longchen and Zhang Lanua didn't talk to each other anymore. The group traveled quickly and arrived at the War Kingdom in 10 days. Zhang Lanua seemed to be in a bad mood. She snorted coldly at Longchen, "Take out the war god Dharma seal, I will find a way to get my father back." Over the next few days, have the array masters of the War Kingdom reinforce the array as much as possible. Longchen shook his head and didn't take out the war god Dharma seal. He stared at Zhang Lanua and said, "This place is too far away from the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain." Moreover, Imperial Emperor Zhang Kuang was ordered by the Ethereal King to go to the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain. He won't be able to make it back in time. As for the array here, there is no need for the array masters to do it. I will set it up myself. After Longchen said that, the great emperors around him couldn't help but twitch their eyes. Over the past few days, they had clearly understood Longchen's situation. The ones coming to the War Kingdom weren't just one or two ordinary great emperors, they were 3 crowned imperial emperors who followed the human Dao sovereign to the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain. These people who returned from the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain were equivalent to standing at the pinnacle of the major forces. When the great emperors left the encampment, the crowned great perfection imperial emperors were the strongest. "You will set up the array but leave the war god Dharma seal to me for the time being. I will try to observe the heavenly fate for you and then come up with a plan," Zhang Lanua said in a deep voice. Longchen nodded. Without further ado, he began to set up the formation. This time, he didn't add the World Suppression Cauldron's fragment into the array. Instead, he changed the path of the array with the help of the great emperor's remnant soul. Don't change the array, just rearrange the array according to my requirements and add 5 defensive arrays. The great emperor's remnant soul said to Long Chen. Under Zhang Lanyue's authorization, Long Chen went to and fro the array cores in the War Kingdom. In his hand was a jade slip that recorded the defensive array of the War Kingdom. On the other side, Zhang Lanyue was using the War God Dharma seal to cast the Heavenly Fate art to find the location of the 3 Imperial Emperors. In the end, she still chose to use the War God Dharma seal to inform Imperial Emperor and Zhangquang Emperor. In the room, above the War God Dharma seal, light flashed. Emperor Zhangquang and Sovereign Zhangquang appeared together. The ancient sacred divine world was vast and boundless. Even the northern foot territory was unimaginably large. The distance between the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain and the Warring States Kingdom would take an Emperor Realm Master several months to travel at full speed. At such a distance, even if the great emperors wanted to send messages, they would need a special item. This replica of the War God Dharma seal was left behind by Sovereign Zhangquang himself to ensure Zhang Lanyue's safety. When Emperor Zhangquang saw Zhang Lanyue, he asked, Did something happen in the War Kingdom? Sovereign Zhangquang stood at the side and didn't say anything. The two of them were still flying through the air, seemingly on their way to the Void Soul Mountain. Zhang Lanyue took a deep breath and said, Father, I brought Long Chen to the Warring States Kingdom. I want to protect his life. Both Sovereign Zhangquang and Imperial Lord Zhangquang were stunned by Zhang Lanyue's words and their faces turned gloomy. Imperial Lord Zhangquang shouted, Nonsense! Do you know what you are doing? The human Dao Emperor risked being punished by the Ethereal King to send 3 people back. This is equivalent to telling everyone that Long Chen can't be saved. Even Sovereign Zhangquang, who was at the side, said in a deep voice, Lanyu, we only told you about the human Dao Sovereign's pursuit of Long Chen. You have already done your duty by spreading the news. You shouldn't have tied the Warring States Kingdom to him. Zhang Lanyue didn't expect Sovereign Zhangquang and Sovereign Zhangquang to be so resolute about this matter. Zhang Lanyue seemed to be angry and shouted, Uncle, you are also an Emperor Realm Master. Why are you afraid of the human Dao Emperor? Long Chen is definitely worth your protection. As long as he is alive, he will become an existence that shakes the entire ancient sacred divine world. Zhang Lanyue told them about how Long Chen killed 3 late-stage Imperial Emperors and 300,000 Imperial Realm Masters. She also told them about how he killed more than 10 Imperial Emperors in the Nuwa Divine Tribe. Long Chen's cultivation level rose quickly, his combat strength was high, his methods were ruthless and decisive. He was definitely worthy of being called a genius. I will say that the blood-soaked Divine Tribe's origin and the Imperial Emperor realm were all done by Long Chen. Zhang Lanyue became more excited as she spoke. It was as if Long Chen was the brightest star in her eyes. Enough! Zhang Lanyue wanted to continue but was interrupted by Sovereign Zhangquang. Zhang Lanyue was speechless and didn't say anything for a long time. Sovereign Zhangquang stood up and stared at Zhang Lanyue while shaking his head. I will tell you the truth. The human Dao Emperor's trip was approved by the Ethereal King. The Ethereal King cultivates the Dao of the soul. He doesn't care about the origin of the Imperial Lord's remnant body. The human Dao Emperor is obsessed with it. With 3 great perfection Imperial Emperors pursuing him, he has no chance of surviving. The Ethereal King will not allow us to return to our encampment. At this point, Zhang Lanyue gradually lost her voice. If Sovereign Zhangquang and Sovereign Zhangquang were unable to return, Long Chen would be dead for sure. Seeing Zhang Lanyue's despondent expression, Sovereign Zhangquang shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. Whether this person can live or not, he can only depend on himself. We cannot tie Zhangquang to him. Your uncle and I are not in the encampment. If you were with him, you might be in danger. This person cannot be your Dao companion. These 3 crowned great perfection Imperial Emperors are definitely not people who can stop them in the various garrisons. Zhang Lanyue did not reply. In the end, she cut off the connection with the War God Dharma seal. She did not expect that the human Tao Emperor's killing of Longchen was approved by the ethereal king. She walked out of the palace and looked at Longchen, who was repairing the array formation. She was stunned. She thought of the time when Longchen helped her to awaken her ancestral source and the time when he helped her to become an imperial emperor. Finally, she thought of the information she obtained from investigating Longchen a few days ago. Her feelings for Longchen started out as gratitude. But in the end, it turned into love. She admired Longchen's talent and his decisiveness. He was worthy of her. Jean Lanua took a deep breath and the gloominess on her face was swept away. It was the same as when she used the war god Dharma seal to send a message to Sovereign Zhang Kuang and Sovereign Zhang Kuang. She flew to Longchen's side and murmured, "How long can the array formation you set up last against the human Tao Emperor? If the array formation is broken, what will you do?" Longchen did not turn his head and continued to perfect the array formation. The godly rays fell like a painting. Chapter 895. As long as they came, they would not be able to return alive. Longchen's words were not arrogant. Instead, they were filled with confidence and determination. Jean Lanua looked at Longchen, who was still busy strengthening the array. She was a little stunned. She nodded and did not say anything else. She turned around and prepared the war country for battle. Longchen took 10 days to set up the array. After that, he chose to go into seclusion in the secret room of the war country. On the other side, the 3 great perfection imperial emperors sent by the human Tao sovereign had set off from the divine Crow Sea. Behind them were 300,000 great emperors. The leader of the group had the body of a child and the face of an old man. He said in a clear voice, "Tianshuzi, did you see it clearly? It's really in the direction of the war country." Although this person had a strange appearance, his words were filled with authority. As soon as he finished speaking, another imperial emperor behind him was covered in a blood-red glow. His eyes were filled with origin energy. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "I'm sure. It's in the war country." It seems like Imperial Emperor Zhang Kuang did not keep his subordinates in check. The other Imperial Emperor sneered and said, "If we were not afraid of Imperial Emperor Zhang Kuang, we would have slaughtered the entire war country. If you want to do it, just do it. Spare Jean Lanua's life and kill the rest. What can Imperial Emperor Zhang Kuang do?" The leader of the group said calmly, "Should we bring more Imperial Emperors with us?" According to Imperial Emperor Zhang Kuang, more than 10 Imperial Emperors have died in the pursuit of that guy called Longchen. I've heard a lot of rumors recently. They say that he's the one who killed 3 great perfection Imperial Emperors in the Green Moon Valley. Tianshuzi retracted his blood-red glow and seemed to be worried. "Tianshuzi, you think too highly of him. The 3 of us are enough. Do you think he can trap us with his array?" The group was riding on the largest flying beast in the Divine Crow Sea, the Kuan bird, as their mounts. They flew towards the war country. Such a group of people attracted the attention of many forces in the North Foot territory. Many people were shocked. 3 great perfection imperial emperors who had been crowned had gone to the war kingdom. It was enough for everyone to predict the end of the war kingdom. People Tao sovereign's subordinates, with their strength, they should have gone to the Void Soul Mountain. Why would they go to the war kingdom? No matter what the reason is, I'm afraid the warring state's kingdom is going to face a great disaster. It is said that Jean Lanua is the only one guarding the battle kingdom. She has just stepped into the Imperial Emperor realm. It is impossible for her to stop such a force. With the help of flying demonic beasts, the 3 Imperial Emperors brought 300,000 great emperors to the war country in just 3 days. The mighty team directly surrounded 3 of the 4 exits of the warring states. The great perfection emperors of the warring states' kingdom came to the edge of the formation. They were terrified when they saw the 3 great perfection emperors outside. The entire warring states' kingdom fell into chaos. Jean Lanua also appeared above the war kingdom and looked at the 3 imperial emperors sent by the human Tao sovereign. 3 imperial emperors stood guard at the exit, each with 100,000 great emperors behind them. Their faces were filled with mockery. Jean Lanua said confidently, 3 Imperial Emperors, what is the meaning of this? Why are you surrounding the Warring States Kingdom? The Great Perfection Emperor standing at the eastern exit of the Warring States Kingdom spoke first. Jean Lanua, stop playing dumb. Hand over Longchen, or today will be the end of the Warring States Kingdom. The other Imperial Emperor, Tianshuzi, also stood out. Blood-red light flashed in his hand and a blurred image appeared in front of him. Tianshuzi sneered, the Blood Demon God Clan's blood soul tracking technique consumes a layer of my blood essence every time I use it. However, it will never go wrong. Lady Lanua, just tell me if you want to protect this person or not. Jean Lanua was not naive enough to think that a few words would be enough to make them leave. She just wanted to buy as much time as possible. Hong Long Long. Before she could say anything, a deafening sound came from the north gate. The entire Warring States Kingdom's formation flickered. There's no point in talking anymore. The Warring States Kingdom has a deep relationship with Longchen. Now that the Great Emperors are not here, we have nothing to worry about. The Great Perfection Emperor at the North Gate seemed to have lost his patience and attacked the formation crazily. Attack the formation with all your might. Kill whoever you see. The leading living corpse Imperial Emperor also stopped hesitating. Wang Wang. Close to 300,000 Imperial Emperors attacked. The 3 Imperial Emperors also unleashed a terrifying power that suffocated everyone. In an instant, the entire Warring States Kingdom Palace began to tremble. It was as if there was an earthquake inside. Rivers were overturned and rocks were falling. Many Imperial Emperors and the Zhan family's main branch in the Warring States Kingdom were terrified. Jean Lanua, what are you doing? Quickly open the formation and let them take Longchen away. If this continues, we will all die because of you. 3 Great Perfection Emperors. What are you waiting for, Imperial Emperor Lanua? If this continues, we will all die with him. In the face of disaster, many higher-ups in the Warring States Kingdom shouted at Jean Lanua. Jean Lanua did not say a word. She just looked at the people outside attacking the Warring States Kingdom's defensive formation. At this moment, the Warring States Kingdom and Longchen were completely tied together. Stop! The blood demon called Tianshuzi's pupils shrank as he ordered. Following his shout, the other 2 Imperial Emperors also ordered everyone to stop attacking the formation. Tianshuzi, what's wrong? Why did you stop attacking the formation? The leading living corpse Imperial Emperor was puzzled. Tianshuzi looked at the Warring States Kingdom's defensive formation in a daze. He pondered for a moment and said, it's my fault. It seems like the rumors are true. There is a 5 elements reincarnation formation in the Warring States Kingdom's defensive formation. This person is really proficient in the art of formations. We can't try to break the formation for the next 3 days. Let's see how good he is in the art of formations in these 3 days. The people around looked at each other. None of them knew what the 5 elements reincarnation formation was. Only the faces of the 2 Great Perfection Emperors darkened. The 5 elements reincarnation formation could turn the attacks of others into a defensive formation. It was an extremely difficult formation to deal with. Damn it. It seems like this person is really difficult to deal with. But with you, Tianshuzi, here, I would like to see what he can do with his formation. The leading living corpse Imperial Emperor shouted. Tianshuzi nodded and said, don't worry. I will find a way to weaken the formation in these 3 days. When the time comes, we will break the formation in less than 10 days. It won't take too much time. Tianshuzi said and shook his head. The defensive formation was extremely complicated. The simplest way to break it was to attack it day and night. Chapter 896. Tianshuzi was a member of the Blood Demon Divine Clan. He was also a member of the Divine Clan that was born from the source of the earth. The Blood Demon Divine Clan was an expert in the art of array formations. They were especially famous for their tracking skills. They had come with the other 2 Imperial Emperors to prevent Longchen from getting away. 2 array flags flew up in the wind and intertwined with each other. Countless lightning flashed and intertwined with the defensive array formation of the War Kingdom. The Wind and Thunder Array Breaking Flag. It was a rare Dharma artifact of the Blood Demon Divine Clan. Although it was not as powerful as the Dharma artifact of the Blood Demon Divine Clan, it was very effective in breaking array formations. Crackle. Seeing Tian Suzi use the 2 flags, the Living Corpse Emperor nodded in approval. Tian Suzi was able to reach his current position under the human Dao Sovereign and even be crowned because of his mastery of formations. These 2 array flags alone had helped the human Dao Sovereign break many difficult array formations. Huh! But just as he was thinking, a huge fire suddenly appeared in the sky. One of the Wind and Thunder Array Breaking Flags exploded and turned into raging flames that filled the sky. This scene immediately attracted everyone's attention, and all of them turned pale with bewilderment. Only Tian Shuzi's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly put away the other array flag. His face paled a little. The Living Corpse Emperor, who was the leader of the group, jumped over and said in shock, "What happened? What happened to your Dharma artifact? Why did it explode for no reason?" Tian Suzi looked at the array flags that covered the entire War Kingdom. He smiled bitterly and said, "I can't break this array formation. Now, I completely believe that he killed many Imperial Emperors with this array formation. His mastery of array formations might not be as good as mine, but the array formation he used and his meticulousness are not something I can predict." Tian Suzi's exclamation made everyone speechless. Only the Living Corpse Emperor looked serious. This was not the first time he worked with Tian Suzi. His evaluation of Longchen was enough to prove that Longchen was a threat to them in the art of array formations. In the ancient sacred divine world, even though they were not as proficient in array formations as those who cultivated heavenly fate, once they reached the transformative realm, they would be able to communicate with the inextinguishable Tao law through array formations, making them nearly invincible among their peers. Then let's wait for the upper 3 heavens. When the time comes, we'll use all our strength to shatter this formation. This Longchen has such an ability to set up formations, so we have to be more careful. We must not fall into his trap. Outside the War Kingdom, because of the 5 elements reincarnation formation, 3 emperors and 300,000 emperors were held back for 3 days. Inside War Country, it was a complete mess. Longchen remained in the secret room arranged by Jean Lanue. Inside the secret chamber, Longchen sat cross-legged as he circulated the Primal Chaos Golden Codex to its maximum. In front of him was a portion of the Imperial Lord's palm. The veins on the palm were like mountains, emitting an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Longchen asked the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul, "Master, if you want to crown me now, I'm afraid there won't be enough time." The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul snorted coldly, "Just fuse with the body. What's there to delay if I crown you? I will also help you fuse the World Suppression Cauldron's fragment into the 9 Azure Yang halberd." Longchen laughed bitterly in his heart. Since the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul felt that there was nothing wrong with it, he did not say anything else. The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul would occasionally guide him on how to fuse with the body, fuse with the 9 Azure Yang halberd, and communicate with the heaven and earth to crown Longchen. Longchen's heart was in his throat. Especially with regards to the coronation, the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul did not have absolute confidence in it. Even though he had previously crowned the 9 Azure Yang Emperor. After all, the 9 Azure Yang Emperor only had 5 C of reincarnation. However, the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul was getting more and more familiar with the coronation process. It seemed like he had gradually grasped the trick of crowning a lower-level cultivator. At the same time as the coronation, Longchen's body was fusing with the Sovereign Lord's body. At this moment, he felt as though an endless mighty force was surging towards his body. "I have completely understood the changes in the coronation process. You don't have to worry." The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul said, "When you become a venerable emperor, I think I can crown you with a sea of reincarnation of the Divine King level." Longchen could not help but feel excited. If the news of a venerable emperor's body being crowned with a venerable emperor's body spread, no one would believe it. But now, it came from the ancient sacred world's lord. Outside the secret chamber, the War Kingdom was becoming more and more chaotic. The rules of the War Kingdom were becoming chaotic. All the spiritual energy was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. They subconsciously attributed all of this to the three great Perfection Realm Emperors outside the battle formation. For 3 days, the three great Perfection Realm Emperors did not attack the formation again. Only Tianshuzi of the Blood Demon clan stood outside the battle formation for 3 days and 3 nights. It was as though he was completely attracted by the battle formation. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the other two great Perfection Realm Emperors appeared again, they looked at Tianshuzi as though he was possessed. They immediately snorted and woke him up. However, Tianshuzi lost his voice and said, "This person's talent in formations is unparalleled. With my attainments in formations, I can set up these formations, but I can't merge them together so perfectly." The other two Imperial Emperors frowned when they heard Tianshuzi's words. "Don't forget why we're here. Since you can't break the array, we'll just have to force our way through." Tianshuzi sneered when he heard Tianshuzi's words. "Attack it. But I'm afraid it will take at least a month. My understanding of these formations is too shallow." Tianshuzi's words stunned everyone. A month. There were 3 great Perfection Realm Emperors here. Zhan Lanhua, an early Perfection Realm Emperor, was able to hold them off for a month. Boom! Attack it with all your might. I don't believe this formation can hold us off for a month. The martial arts attacks landed once again. The entire War Kingdom felt like doomsday had arrived. Day after day, the 3 great Perfection Realm Emperors attacked the formation with all their might. However, their expressions were getting worse and worse. Just like what Tianshuzi said, the strength of this formation was beyond their imagination. Every time a part of the formation was about to be destroyed, another part would replace it. On the 20th day after they attacked the formation, they also noticed something strange. It was as though all the spiritual beings in the War Kingdom had lost their divine power. Even the great Perfection Realm Emperors seemed to be dispirited. They subconsciously thought that the situation in the War Kingdom had something to do with their attacks on the formation. However, it was all because of Long Chen. The palm of the great Perfection Realm Emperor's remnant body had almost disappeared. What replaced it was Long Chen's palm that had undergone a strange change. The runes on his palm glowed as though they were turning into mountains and rivers. They seemed to be connected to the inextinguishable Tao Law. On the other side, in the Dragon Palace, there was a halberd in front of the great Perfection Realm Emperor's remnant soul. Chapter 897. 3 peak Imperial Emperors and 300,000 Great Emperors under the human Tao Sovereign were blocked outside the Battle Kingdom for a total of 32 days. Many Imperial Emperors from the nearby factions were watching from afar. Rumble. When the Battle Kingdom's array formation was broken, Zhan Lanhua leaped onto it. The 3 peak Imperial Emperors were blocked outside the array formation for a total of 32 days. Their mood was extremely gloomy now. The leading Imperial Emperor's childlike arm reached out to grab Zhan Lanhua. Bang! Zhan Lanhua waved her right hand and the seal of the war god moved along with the wind and clashed with the arm. There was a huge roar, and the shock waves slowly spread out, and the Warring State's disciples in all directions were all inexplicably frightened. Only a few peak Imperial Emperors flew behind Zhan Lanhua. Their faces were as pale as a sheet of paper. 3 peak Imperial Emperors and 300,000 Great Emperors from the human Tao Sovereign Shin Wuxi. This was not a force that the Battle Kingdom could withstand. A single strike landed. Even with the power of the seal of the war god, Zhan Lanhua was still sent flying into the main hall of the Battle Kingdom. In an instant, nearly half of the magnificent hall collapsed under the power of the divine power. The Imperial Emperor stared at Zhan Lanhua and said coldly, "If not for the fact that Sovereign Zhan Kuang is your uncle, I would have buried you along with the Battle Kingdom. If you dare to attack again, don't blame me for not giving face to Sovereign Zhan Kuang." Rumble. Jean Lanua flew out from the main hall. Her beautiful face was filled with determination and coldness. The corner of her mouth was stained with blood. Beside him, many crowned Emperor realm experts from the warring states' kingdom advised, "Emperor Lanyu, don't resist. It's useless. Longchen will die today. The battle kingdom is doomed today. Young lady, don't provoke the three of them. It's more important to stay alive." Jean Lanua remained unmoved after hearing their advice. She stood in front of the main hall. After 10 breaths, she said, "Longchen once said that the day he comes out of seclusion is the day you all die. I believe that. Wang." After that, Jean Lanua activated the seal of the war god again. Although the war god Dharma seal was a replica, its power was truly terrifying. With this item in hand, even though Jean Lanua was only an early-stage Imperial Emperor, she was still able to fight against a Great Circle Imperial Emperor. The living corpse Imperial Emperor's face turned gloomy. He forced Jean Lanua back again and shouted coldly, "Tell me about the War Kingdom, slaughter all of them. Since you want to die, I'll capture you and bring you back to the Divine Crow Sea. Let's see what Sovereign Zhang Kuang can do." Rumble. Jean Lanua fell into the palace again. More than half of the palace was destroyed. However, in the next moment, Jean Lanua once again swayed and the war god Dharma seal in her hand started to crack. Just as she was about to rush out again, a light wave swept out from the depths of the hall. At the center of the light wave, there was a godly radiance that enveloped Jean Lanua, stopping her in her tracks. The ground did not crack, but Longchen's figure slowly emerged from it, as if he was a part of the earth. Longchen looked at Jean Lanua's blood-stained dress. His eyes were filled with complex emotions, but his heart was filled with murderous intent. Ever since Jean Lanua met him, she had never worn a martial armor. Longchen said in a serious voice, "Stand behind me. Leave the rest to me." Longchen's voice was calm, but Jean Lanua's heart was filled with warmth when she heard it. Jean Lanua wiped the blood off the corner of her mouth, but she suddenly smiled and stared at Longchen. That day, she forcefully brought Longchen from the remnant land to the War Kingdom. At that time, Longchen could not even exchange a few blows with her. But in just a short period of time, Longchen's cultivation level had surpassed hers. Jean Lanua nodded obediently and walked behind Longchen. On the other side. After Longchen appeared, the 3 Great Circle Imperial Emperors immediately gathered around him. The 3 of them stared at Longchen with blazing eyes. All of them frowned. They felt that Longchen's body was emitting an aura that made them feel danger. Longchen was the first to speak. "Tell these 300,000 Great Circle Imperial Emperors to stop and retreat from the War Kingdom. I don't want to stain this place with blood today. If the 3 of you can defeat me, I will follow you to meet the human Tao Sovereign." The living corpse Imperial Emperor's face was filled with coldness, but he still waved his hand to signal the 300,000 Great Circle Imperial Emperors to leave the War Kingdom. He stared at Longchen and said coldly, "The Sovereign said that it's best to bring him back alive. Today, I will give you face. I want to see where you got the courage to fight us 3 Great Circle Imperial Emperors. Tian Shuzi, pay attention to whether this person left any killing arrays in the War Kingdom." The living corpse Imperial Emperor felt uneasy, and subconsciously thought that this feeling came from Longchen's attainment in arrays. After all, 3 Great Circle Imperial Emperors were killed in the Green Moon Valley, including the human Tao Sovereign's avatar, the Emperor of Humanity. Tian Shuzi nodded with a solemn expression. His eyes were covered with blood in the blink of an eye, and then he flew into the air and looked around. Seeing this, Longchen shook his head and laughed. "There's no need to look. There are no killing arrays here." Even so, Tian Shuzi was still worried and looked around the War Kingdom. In the end, he shook his head and replied to the living corpse Imperial Emperor, "There are no killing arrays here. Don't worry." Everyone looked at each other. They did not know why Longchen was so confident. If there were no killing arrays here, then he would not be able to survive against 3 Great Circle Imperial Emperors. The living corpse Imperial Emperor frowned and sneered. There are no arrays here? Then what makes you think you can fight the three of us? Come with us now and you will suffer less. After that, the leading living corpse Imperial Emperor's right hand turned into a rainbow and grabbed at Long Chen. The originally childlike arm actually turned into a sky full of sharp white bone weapons the moment it flew out. At the same time, countless corpse chi whizzed up from the ground and covered the ground. The corpse chi was terrifying. Many Great Circle Imperial Emperors' bodies turned into pus when they came into contact with it. Today, I'll use you guys to test my current strength. Long Chen didn't dodge the bone spikes that filled the sky with corpse chi. Instead, he threw a punch. Rumble. The deafening sound made everyone unable to help but wrap themselves in divine power. Under everyone's gazes, the living corpse emperor's attack cracked inch by inch. The bone spikes and corpse energy that filled the sky seemed to be engulfed by Long Chen's divine power, and they turned into water vapor and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 898. Under everyone's watchful eyes. Everyone looked at each other when they saw Long Chen clashing head-on with the living corpse emperor. This was an expert in the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm that they had met before. Could it be that Long Chen was also in the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm? Zhan Lanhua stood behind Long Chen. Her eyes shone brightly. Many people from the Warring States Kingdom were also shocked. A few days ago, Long Chen followed Zhan Lanhua to the Warring States Kingdom. However, his cultivation was not at this level. The living corpse emperor stared at Long Chen. He could not help but ask Tianshuzi again, "Are you sure there's no killing array here? Then why is this person's combat strength so different from the information we received?" Tianshuzi was also shocked. He shook his head and said, "There's no killing array here. Although his aura is a little weak, I don't think he used any secret techniques to force out his potential." Everyone was shocked when they heard Tianshuzi's words. If that was the case, it meant that Long Chen was really in the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm. Is this the reason why young lady wants to protect Long Chen? He's already in the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm. This person is unbelievable. When he first came to the Warring States Kingdom, he was only in the Great Perfection Imperial realm. I'm afraid he's hiding his cultivation. I've never heard of anyone in the ancient Saint Divine world who could advance so quickly. That's true. Even now, we can't sense his aura. We can't tell what his cultivation is. He's going to face 3 Great Perfection Imperial Emperors who have already been crowned. So what if he's hiding his cultivation? He won't be able to defeat the 3 of them without reaching the Emperor realm. Many people in the Warring States Kingdom had their own guesses about Long Chen. Long Chen had asked all the Great Perfection Imperial Emperors to withdraw from the Warring States Kingdom. However, everyone could tell that even if Long Chen had reached the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm, he would not be able to defeat 3 Great Perfection Imperial Emperors. Great Perfection Sovereign Emperor. No wonder the human Tao Sovereign sent so many people but none of them returned. You really hid your strength well. After the living corpse sovereign finished speaking, the 3 of them immediately surrounded Long Chen in a pincer formation. They were confident that they could defeat Long Chen, but if they allowed someone of the same cultivation level to escape, even they might not be able to catch up. Buzz buzz buzz. The sea of reincarnation behind the 3 of them undulated, and their auras rose once again. Visible ripples began to appear in the surrounding space. Let's attack together and take him down. Don't cause any more trouble. The living corpse sovereign gave the order and the 3 of them attacked at the same time. It had to be said. Long Chen's strength had exceeded their expectations, but he was only one person after all. Soul Skill, Blood Demon Soul Lock. Soul Skill, Living Corpse Abyss. Soul Skill, Thundercloud Twist. After the 3 of them finished speaking, they unleashed their origin soul skills at the same time. The living corpse sovereign's corpse chi was like a tidal wave. With a wave of his hand, the corpse chi engulfed Long Chen's body. Wherever the corpse chi passed, the ground turned into pus. The palace not far from Longchen also disappeared without a trace. Crackle crackle. Countless people from the Battle Kingdom were enveloped by the corpse chi. Their divine power was corroded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Many mid-stage soul emperors turned into green smoke and died. Zhang Lanhua quickly moved out of the attack range of the three of them. The corpse chi had only touched her for a short while, but she felt that her origin energy was almost stagnant. But once she put some distance between herself and Longchen, the killing intent around her decreased significantly. She looked at Longchen's back from afar, her eyes filled with worry. Only she knew that Longchen had not concealed his cultivation from the beginning. In such a short period of time, Longchen had indeed advanced from a soul emperor to a late-stage sovereign emperor. The corpse chi was like a tidal wave. It was like thousands of chains that imprisoned Longchen's body. At the same time, behind Tianshuzi, the blood cloud covered the sky and stretched for thousands of miles. The blood-red cloud covered the sky and the sun. There were formation patterns on it. Countless blood-red lights fell and gathered around Longchen. It was like a huge blood-red light pillar that suppressed him. On the other side, thunderous clouds rumbled like the collapse of a mountain. Killing intent filled the air. They turned into sharp blades of lightning that shot towards Longchen. 3 soul skills, 3 crowned soul emperors in the Great Circle. Such a vast amount of power covered almost half of the Battle Kingdom. If not for the fact that all their attention was on Longchen, half of the Battle Kingdom would have been burnt to a crisp. The 3 of them worked well together. They used the corpse chi to bind Longchen's body. They used the Blood Demon God Clan's soul array to suppress Longchen's soul. Another one used a lightning soul skill to kill Longchen. This move was enough to kill most of the people in the same realm. Soul skill, star attraction chaos art. As the people around shook their heads and sighed, they saw Longchen counterattack with a soul skill. As Longchen's voice fell, the wind and clouds in all directions changed. The sky suddenly darkened, and countless stars shone on the ground. Buzz. A rumbling sound whistled from Longchen's body. The space behind him seemed to have turned into chaos, and a sky full of stars appeared under his feet. Divine light fell like a waterfall. He grabbed the air with his right hand, and the stars in the sky fell. This star broke through the blood cloud array formation that filled the sky, broke through the monstrous sea of lightning, and even shattered the endless corpse chi. Rumble. The loud explosion and the trembling of the earth made everyone tremble in fear. Countless experts wrapped themselves in divine power and flew away. There were also many people who fell to the ground and fainted in the shock wave. Poochie poochie, the stars fell as if the world was about to be destroyed. The bright stars in the sky disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened in the Battle Kingdom. Not even the fragments of the stars were left on the ground. Only the 3 peak Imperial Emperors were vomiting blood. They stared at Longchen in shock. They looked around and saw that there was no change in the Battle Kingdom. The living corpse Imperial Emperor exclaimed, "You, what kind of god race are you? Your soul skill is so terrifying that you can mobilize the power of the stars in the sky. You have been crowned. All the great emperors have gone to the Void Soul Mountain. Who can crown you?" Although Longchen did not manifest his sea of reincarnation, the 3 people present were not idiots. Longchen's soul skill was powerful, but if he had not been crowned by an emperor, it was impossible for him to suppress the 3 of them with his soul skill. There was only one reason for this. Not only was Longchen's god race bloodline much higher than theirs, but the number of crowned seas of reincarnation was not lower than any of them. However, no matter what, with just this attack alone, their understanding of Longchen had undergone a tremendous change. In the entire Northfoot realm, there were only a handful of peak Imperial Emperors who had the same battle strength as Longchen. Chapter 899. The Primal Chaos Golden Codex and the Imperial Lord's remnant body gave him great divine power. It was not something that could be compared to those of the same cultivation level within the Northfoot territory. On the other hand, his battle strength was inseparable from the coronation. There was a fundamental difference between the coronation of an imperial lord and the coronation of an imperial lord. Of course, Long Chen's sea of reincarnation was far beyond everyone's imagination. He had dozens of sea of reincarnation when he was only at the Emperor realm, within the North Foot territory. It was truly unbelievable that someone of the same cultivation level could go against him. There were many imperial emperors among the spies. When they saw the scene, they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. They knew that after this battle, Long Chen's name would cause an uproar in the North Foot territory. This person was only a late-stage imperial emperor, but he was able to suppress 3 great perfection imperial emperors. The people from the War Kingdom stared at Long Chen in a different light. Many of them even began to praise Zhang Lanyue's foresight. Long Chen's expression remained unchanged as he stared at the 3 imperial monarchs, and his gaze was like a torch as he said, "There's no need to hide it. Just use it openly. Let me see what might this treasure of yours possesses." The 3 great perfection imperial emperors' expressions darkened when they heard Long Chen's words. The living corpse imperial emperor snorted coldly. A long and thin bone spear appeared in his left hand. The bone spear was densely covered with inscriptions and arrays. It was only as thick as a finger and was about the same length as a finger. However, one could clearly see that there was a jagged gap on it. At the same time, Tian Suzi and the other imperial emperor raised their left hand. They also had the same jagged bone spear in their hands. When the bone spear appeared, it shone with a blinding black light. Triple poison soul-destroying spike. They even brought this thing with them. This time, Long Chen is definitely going to die. One of the imperial emperors could not help but exclaim from afar. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. They stared at the bone spear in the 3 imperial emperors' hands. Even Zhang Lanyue couldn't help but ask Long Chen worriedly, "This thing is the bone spike of 3 poisonous python origin beasts. It was personally refined by a human Dao emperor and is said to have severely injured an emperor before." The living corpse emperor and the other 2 ignored the gazes of the surrounding people. The bone spurs in their hands actually floated up slowly, reflecting each other's brilliance as they aimed straight at Long Chen. The 3 bone spurs were like 3 enormous pythons, staring at Long Chen. Black smoke was rolling around the bone spurs, and the stench was nauseating. The living corpse emperor said in a deep voice, "Although this item is not an ancestral artifact of the god race, it can devour nearly half of my essence blood each time it is used. The 3 of us need to activate the 3 bone spurs at the same time. However, once this item appears, I'm afraid it will only be able to bring your soul back. Your physical body will most likely be destroyed." Tian Suzi also said, "Your attainments in array formations have surprised me. The combat strength you displayed today is also beyond my expectations. You can only blame yourself for provoking our overlord." The 3 bone spurs moved again, and black smoke billowed everywhere they passed. Zhang Lanyue moved her hand, and actually activated the seal of the war god to the maximum, rushing towards the bone spurs. At the same time, she shouted, "Find a chance to escape." Whoosh! The seal of the war god that was already full of cracks was pierced through by the bone spurs. The living corpse emperor saw that the seal of the war god had really bought a chance for Long Chen to escape. His face darkened, and he shouted, "Do you really think that we won't dare to touch you?" Buzz! The living corpse emperor waved his hand, and the bone spurs immediately flew towards Zhang Lanyue. Long Chen saw this and said coldly, "You're courting death." Whoosh! Long Chen leaped up, and in a flash, he landed in front of Zhang Lanyue. The 3 emperors didn't hesitate anymore, and the divine light in their hands flowed into the bone spurs like a river. The bone spurs expanded with the wind, and the surrounding black smoke billowed, as if there was a gigantic origin beast hiding within. The power of the bone spurs was pushed to the maximum, and it flew towards Long Chen. Even from 10,000 miles away, everyone could feel the killing intent emanating from the bone spikes. Most early or even mid-great emperors would be crushed to death by the poisonous miasma. "Weapon, come." As the bone spurs were about to land, Long Chen grabbed the air with his right hand, and a long halberd appeared in his hand. As soon as the halberd appeared, the surrounding black smoke suddenly stopped, and the carvings on the halberd appeared, as if a gigantic dragon was about to leap out. The dragon and the phoenix roared, and the thunder rumbled like a sea. The thunder rumbled in the sky, and it hurt everyone's eardrums. The sea of lightning behind Longchen was like a tidal wave. Rumble. The halberd vibrated, and the entire space seemed to stop for a moment. The immense pressure made everyone feel as if they were carrying an ancient mountain on their backs. Break! The halberd pierced through the air, and the divine light was like a shooting star. The bone spurs let out a shrill cry, and the black smoke dissipated. When everyone looked over, they saw that the 3 bone spurs were all suppressed to the ground, as if they were made of ordinary metal. Whoosh! Blood spurted out, and before anyone could react, Longchen's halberd had already pierced through a person. This person was the living corpse emperor, the leader of the group. Just 3 evil artifacts, nothing more. Longchen's divine light was like a waterfall behind him, and the halberd in his hand emitted a terrifying aura. The living corpse emperor's chest was pierced through by the halberd. The divine light around him did not dissipate at all, as if the halberd contained boundless pressure. The tip of the halberd was like a spear, and there was an axe at the side. Its sharpness made one shudder. Rumble. With a loud explosion, the living corpse emperor's body turned into a rain of blood, and he was completely crushed. Even so, his soul was still pierced through by the halberd, and he could not move an inch. Hiss. The surroundings fell into an extreme silence, and countless pairs of eyes stared at Longchen and his halberd. Even Tianshuzi and the other complete stage god emperor could not help but take a few steps back, and their faces were as pale as paper. They had never thought that they would be defeated so thoroughly in the god emperor realm. Longchen's strength made them feel powerless. Whether it was in terms of cultivation, fighting strength, soul skills, or artifacts, they had no advantage. Longchen stared at the 2 of them, and his eyes gradually turned cold. He said, "Let's go. I'll take a look at the Divine Crow Sea. Over the past few days, the human Tao Emperor has sent people to find me time and time again. Today, it's time to return the favor." Tianshuzi and the other complete stage god emperor shuddered after Longchen finished speaking. The living corpse emperor's soul on Longchen's halberd shouted crazily, "How dare you destroy my body and injure my soul, and you still want to go to the Divine Crow Sea? Do you know how many experts are guarding the Divine Crow Sea?" Rumble. Chapter 900. With the living corpse emperor dead, the other 2 emperors froze on the spot as if they were frozen. At this moment, they finally understood how terrifying Longchen was. And the halberd in his hand, the halberd had an unparalleled suppressive power. Its terrifying aura made them tremble in fear. "I'm going to the Divine Crow Sea. Do you want to come along?" Longchen ignored the 2 and turned to Jean Lanue. Under everyone's gaze, Jean Lanue's cheeks flushed red. She nodded and agreed. She said to Longchen, "I'll go with you. From today onwards, I'm no longer a member of the Battle Kingdom." As soon as she said that, everyone from the Battle Kingdom looked at Jean Lanue. But soon, everyone understood her and Longchen's intentions. At this moment, the grudge between Longchen and the human Tao sovereign was irreconcilable. If Jean Lanue wanted to follow Longchen, her life and death would have nothing to do with the Battle Kingdom or sovereign Zhang Kuang. Kacha. While everyone was sorting out their thoughts, they saw Longchen's halberd shattering the bodies of the other 2 emperors. Seeing such a scene, everyone sighed endlessly. The 2 great perfection emperors had completely given up on resisting. They no longer had the heart to fight against Longchen. "Bring me to the Divine Crow Sea." Longchen ordered and brought the 2 emperors' souls out of the Battle Kingdom. Outside the Battle Kingdom, the 300,000 great perfection emperors were at a loss at this moment. They never thought that their masters would be defeated. Out of the 3 great perfection emperors, 2 were captured and the last one was completely annihilated. They looked at Longchen in a daze. None of them dared to make a move. 300,000 Great Perfection Emperors were enough to annihilate an ordinary Great Perfection Emperor. But an expert of Long Chen's level was not someone they could threaten. Even if they had more people, it would be futile. Long Chen was able to take down 3 Great Perfection Emperors who had been crowned. It was enough to show his terrifying combat strength. Everyone watched as Long Chen and Zhang Lanyue disappeared into the horizon with the divine souls of the 2 imperial emperors. No one spoke for a long time. Not long after, people started to speak one after another. Why is the human Tao sovereign looking for this person? Even 3 peak imperial emperors have been mobilized. No matter what, this human Tao emperor has taken a big tumble this time. Although this brat is powerful, I fear he won't live for long. Human sovereign has been famous for a long time. When Su Han returns from the mountain, this person will have no chance of surviving. The halberd in that fellow's hand is indeed somewhat similar to the 9 Firmament Suppression halberd of the 9 Firmament Divine Clan. However, its might seems to be much greater. In particular, that frightening suppressive force is something that can be clearly felt even from tens of thousands of miles away. That's right. Otherwise, even the soul of a consummate imperial monarch wouldn't have been unable to escape his halberd strike. Speaking of which, when this guy goes to the Divine Crow Sea, I'm afraid the human Tao Emperor will be furious when he finds out, everyone was discussing fervently. After the appearance of the bone-killed Divine King and the various sovereigns heading towards Su Han's mountain, Long Chen had undoubtedly become another hot topic. When the crowd dispersed, they couldn't help but ask, since when did our North Foot territory have such a monstrous talent? On the other side, Long Chen and Zhang Lanyue took the divine souls of the 2 imperial emperors and sat on the flying demonic beast, heading straight towards the Divine Crow Sea. Looking down from tens of thousands of miles above the ground, the continent gradually disappeared and was replaced by an endless blue sea. Seeing them gradually leaving the continent and heading towards the Divine Crow Sea, Tianshuzi couldn't help but ask Long Chen, "Sir, can you listen to me?" Long Chen nodded, indicating for him to continue. Tianshuzi said, "Since you're so powerful, why don't you leave the North Foot territory and head towards the northeast? You can ride this demonic beast for a year and reach the 9 continents territory and the spiritual mountain territory. You can reach the auspicious head territory in 2 years if you head south. Why do you have to go to the Divine Crow Mountain?" The meaning behind his words couldn't be clearer. It was to hide. Both the 9 continents territory and the spiritual mountain territory were no longer under the control of the ethereal king. Even if the human Tao sovereign wanted to find trouble with Long Chen, it would be extremely difficult. However, if Long Chen continued to head towards the Divine Crow Mountain, with his current strength, he might be able to wreak havoc, but there would be no way out. At that time, even if Long Chen left the North Foot territory, the human Tao sovereign would chase him to the ends of the earth. The corners of Long Chen's mouth curled into a smile. This smile was somewhat cold. He said in a low voice, "If you know the grudge between me and the human Tao sovereign, you might not say that. Moreover, I don't want to run away with my tail between my legs. I don't want to leave the North Foot territory." The human Tao sovereign destroyed the corpse world, killing countless living beings. Long Chen had to avenge this grudge. On the other hand, Sovereign Le knew that he had inherited the Sovereign Lord's internal organs. Even if he escaped from the North Foot territory, the human Tao sovereign would not let him go so easily. Since that was the case, Long Chen would play along with him. Of course, the appearance of the godly king of bone slaughter had given Long Chen a lot of room for development. At least, all the sovereign lords in the North Foot territory were not in their encampments. As long as they did not head to the Void Soul Mountain, Long Chen was confident that he could protect himself. "Tell me about the Divine Crow Sea. Even if the Divine Crow Sea is a steel tree, I will chop it down a few times." Long Chen asked Tianshuzi and Tianshuzi. The 2 of them shook their heads. However, their lives were in Long Chen's hands now. At their current cultivation level, as long as they had the opportunity, they would have the chance to reach the sovereign realm. Naturally, they were not willing to die here. Although you are strong, it might not be a foolproof trip to the Divine Crow Sea. The Divine Crow Sea's resources are not as simple as you think, Tianshuzi said. His words sounded like he still wanted Longchen to let them go and leave the North Foot territory. A sovereign lord has tens of thousands of imperial emperors under his command. Although the elites have been brought to the Void Soul Mountain, there are still at least 7,000 imperial emperors left behind. Their encampment even controls an origin world. Although you are strong, this trip is tantamount to asking for trouble, the other imperial emperor chimed in. Longchen remained silent and motioned for the two to continue. The strength of a sovereign lord was not only in his cultivation, but also in his subordinates. A sovereign lord had tens of thousands of imperial emperors under his command, and each imperial emperor had hundreds of thousands of imperial emperors under his command. Such a huge amount of battle power was enough to deter anyone. Buzz. While Longchen was concentrating on the conversation between the two of them, a bright green mark on his left arm suddenly pulsated, and the bones in his body started to rumble. Longchen's pupils shrank. He immediately circulated the Primal Chaos Golden Codex to resist the desire in his heart. You also have the evil bone technique left behind by the godly king of bone slaughter. Tianshuzi's expression changed as he stared at Longchen. Longchen said in a deep voice, "Do you know why the godly king of bone slaughter left this technique on so many imperial emperors?" Chapter 901. Divine Crow Sea. It was a place where the sea water was as red as fire. It was said that there were many divine crow stones at the bottom of the sea. Looking down from tens of thousands of miles above the Red Sea, countless islands could be seen scattered all the way to the horizon. Seeing that they had arrived at the Divine Crow Sea, Tianshuzi couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He knew that the Divine Crow Sea would be in chaos no matter what. Are you really going to wreak havoc in the Divine Crow Sea? Tianshuzi and the other Imperial Emperor looked at Longchen in shock. Longchen didn't answer them directly. Instead, he said in a low voice, "I won't kill the two of you today, but you'd better not appear in front of me again. Next time, I won't be in such a good mood." The two of them nodded. Their hearts trembled as they hurriedly bowed and ran away. When the two of them turned around, they couldn't see Longchen anymore. Tianshuzi couldn't help but ask the person beside him, "What should we do?" "Let's go to the desolate ice mountain first. We'll decide what to do after we reform our bodies." Hearing this, the other person said with a dark face, "Are you really going to leave the human Tao Emperor? Once he wreaks havoc in the Divine Crow Sea, even the human Tao Emperor in the Void Soul Mountain will know about it. When the human Tao Emperor makes his move, he will definitely die." As he spoke, Tianshuzi couldn't help but shake his head. He looked at the Divine Crow Sea from afar and muttered, "Don't you understand what he said at the end? If he sees us again, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive. This has nothing to do with the human Tao Emperor. This person's heart is as firm as steel. Even if the human Tao Emperor can suppress him, he will still take our lives." After saying that, Tianshuzi disappeared into the sky. The other Imperial Emperor stood on the spot. After a while, he sneered, "I think you're scared out of your wits by this person." Just as this person's voice fell and his spirit was about to move, he discovered that his entire body was actually bound to the spot. For some reason, Longchen's voice appeared in his soul. He said indifferently, "He's much smarter than you. At least he knows that once he becomes my enemy, no matter now or in the future, only death awaits him." When this person heard Longchen's words, his entire soul trembled incessantly. He had never thought that Longchen would have such a trick up his sleeve. He finally understood why Tianshuzi had asked him what his plans were before he left, and why he had advised him to leave the human Tao sovereign realm. Unfortunately, it was already too late. His divine soul couldn't help but float towards Longchen's direction. When he appeared in front of Longchen, even Zhang Lanhua was stunned. She didn't expect that Longchen, who had just let this person go, would capture him again in the next moment. The voice of the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul appeared in Longchen's ears. He snorted coldly and said, "Just kill the two of them. What's the point of doing this?" Longchen shook his head and did not explain. There was no way he could explain. He just did it when he thought of it. Along the way, Tian Suzi told him everything that happened in the Divine Crow Sea. This person was very smart and knew what to do to save his life. Longchen did everything according to his heart. If he wanted to give them a way out, he gave it to them. Longchen did not have a deep grudge against him. It was fine to spare his life, but destroying his physical body was still a punishment. Spare my life. Spare my life. If you let me go, I swear I will never become a disciple of the human Tao sovereign realm. The sovereign lord in front of Longchen was completely terrified. When Longchen heard his cries, a chilling smile appeared on his face. He had already given this person a chance to live. Since he could not catch it, he could not blame anyone else. Longchen stared at him and said, "I won't kill you, but I want you to do a few things for me." Longchen drew out a ray of green light from his halberd. Then, he used the green light to draw out a series of complicated runes. The green runes landed on the glabella of this person's divine soul like a soldering iron. Chi. The green runes seemed to have a strong sense of corrosion. As this person screamed in pain, they entered his divine soul. Go! There are 32 sovereign lords in the Divine Crow Sea from the human Tao sovereign realm. I want none of them to live. Longchen's voice was calm. However, his voice was like a bolt from the blue in the Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord's ears. Most of these 32 Sovereign Lords were personally raised by the human Tao Sovereign. Their cultivations were not very strong. Some of them could not even compare to ordinary Sovereign Lords. However, all of them were related to the human Tao Sovereign by blood. If he killed all of them, even if Longchen did not kill him, the human Tao Sovereign would probably cut him into pieces. However, when he saw Longchen's cold eyes, his heart turned even colder. He knew that if he killed these people, he might be able to find a way to escape this place and leave the North Foot realm. On the way here, I erased your connection with the human Tao Sovereign. If you are lucky enough to kill these 32 Sovereign Lords, you might be able to leave the North Foot realm alive. Longchen reminded him again. After a while, the Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord could only nod helplessly. At this moment, he wanted to slap himself. If he had left with Tian Suzi and went to the North Desolate Ice Plains, he would not be in so much trouble. Now, he could only take one step at a time. Preserving his life was the most important thing. The Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord let out a long sigh and flew towards the many islands in the Divine Crow Sea. The sea water and lightning converged, allowing him to reform his physical body. After all, he was a great Circle Sovereign Lord. Although he only had a divine soul now, he could probably use 50% to 60% of his strength with this illusory physical body. With 50 to 60% of his strength, even ordinary late-stage sovereign emperors would not be a match for him. Zhang Lanhua watched as the Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord left. She narrowed her eyes and said, "When he causes trouble in the Divine Crow Sea, you can destroy the 7 fire veins in the Divine Crow Sea. At that time, the entire Divine Crow Sea will evaporate." Longchen smiled and nodded. He teased, "I didn't expect our Lady Lanhua to be so smart." Zhang Lanhua's face turned red. She raised her sword and was about to slash at Longchen. However, Longchen pulled her into his arms. The two of them flew in the opposite direction of the Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord. After a few hours, above the Divine Crow Sea, countless rays of divine light shot up into the sky. Many Sovereign Lords flew towards the center of the sea. Someone is killing a Sovereign Lord of the main branch. Who dares to intrude into the Divine Crow Sea? Quickly activate the defensive array and seal the center of the Divine Crow Sea. Kill the intruder. Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord. It's the Thunder Rock Sovereign Lord. Didn't he go to the Void Soul Calamity Mountain with the Sovereign Lord? He must be crazy. How dare he attack a Sovereign Lord of the main branch? Countless shouts and shouts could be heard. Under the human Tao Sovereign Lord, the Sovereign Lords of the main branch were all of high status. In the Divine Crow Sea, they were all second only to the Sovereign Lord. Chapter 902 In an instant, the entire Divine Crow Sea was in chaos. Before the protective array in the Divine Crow Sea was activated, many Imperial Emperors rushed towards the Thunder Rock Monarch. However, many of them were afraid of the Thunder Rock Monarch's cultivation level. After all, he was a peak Imperial Emperor and had been crowned before. It was only when hundreds of Imperial Emperors chased after him that someone finally made a move. On the other side, Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua had already gone deep into the sea. Most of the Imperial Emperors were focused on the Thunder Rock Monarch, which made it easy for Long Chen to move around. Who dares to enter the Divine Crow Sea, the fire vein, bang. Before this person could finish speaking, before Shen Mang's body could leave his body, it was instantly shattered by Long Chen's halberd. With the halberd in his hand, Long Chen could defeat a mid-stage Imperial Emperor or even a late-stage Imperial Emperor. Only crowned Imperial Emperors like the Living Corpse Imperial Emperor could take a few hits from him. Of course, the only outcome was death. Within the Northern Foot territory, Long Chen was not afraid of anyone below the Emperor realm. In just a few hours, they arrived at the location of the 7 fire veins. Along the way, he had killed more than 10 Imperial Emperors. Fortunately, everyone's attention was focused on the Thunder Rock Monarch and no one paid attention to the fire veins. Another reason was that the person guarding the fire veins had died too quickly. He did not even have the time to spread the news. Zhang Lanhua followed behind Long Chen. She did not say a word but her eyes were filled with admiration. Let's hurry up. I'm afraid someone will notice that something is amiss here. If a large number of Imperial Emperors and countless Imperial Emperors surround the islands near the fire veins, it will be troublesome. Zhang Lanhua reminded when she saw the ripples around them. Long Chen nodded. He went deep into the fire veins and continued to carve the array. The 7 fire veins were like 7 giant serpents that penetrated thousands of miles under the Divine Crow Sea. As Long Chen went deep into the fire veins, he heard the voice of the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul saying, "There are weapons being nurtured in the 7 fire veins. The aura is somewhat familiar but also somewhat different. Go closer." Long Chen went deeper into the center of the 7 fire veins. After a while, the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul confirmed it. The aura in the fire vein came from the World Suppression Cauldron. Below the Divine Crow Sea, the human Tao Sovereign was actually using a broken part of the World Suppression Cauldron to refine a weapon. Long Chen followed the aura of the Monarch Lord's remnant soul and continued to rush down the river. At the end of the 7 fire veins, he saw a bronze mirror. There seemed to be fire crows circling around the copper mirror, constantly absorbing the power of the 7 fire veins. 1,000 meters in front of the bronze mirror, there were 10 single-horned fiery unicorn pythons with huge chains on their bodies. Lava was flowing as the pythons breathed. Zhang Lanhua followed closely behind. She couldn't help but be surprised at the scene. Long Chen smiled at Zhang Lanhua and said, "I'm afraid the human Tao Emperors would never have thought that someone would be able to break into the 7 fire veins and even kill the fire Qilin python." After saying that, Long Chen held his halberd and rushed into the group of fire Qilin pythons without any hesitation. These pythons were extremely fast, and their scales were covered in the glow of divine flames. Every single one of them had the combat prowess of a 7th-level monarch. When 10 of them attacked at the same time, even a complete cycle monarch like the Living Corpse monarch would have to avoid them. However, Long Chen held his halberd and didn't retreat at all. The halberd glowed brightly and could kill the pythons with a single strike. Zhang Lanhua also couldn't help but look at Long Chen's right hand. His right hand seemed to possess great power. With the halberd as his weapon, it seemed like he could destroy the heavens and earth. After 15 minutes, someone on the fire veins noticed the violent tremors on the ground. A few late-stage monarchs' expression changed drastically. They kept on sending out orders and gathered countless monarchs. Ignore the Thunder Rock Monarch. Someone has sneaked into the fire veins. How can this be? There are more than 10 monarchs guarding the fire veins. Why is there no sound at all? The Thunder Rock Monarch is being chased by nearly 1,000 mid-stage monarchs. Ignore him. Order all the monarchs to gather at the Divine Crow Sea. Lead all the monarchs from the garrisons and surround the Divine Crow Sea. Kill anyone who tries to escape. The Divine Crow Sea was in a state of chaos. Countless divine lights flashed as monarchs turned into rainbows and rushed towards the fire veins. When they entered the Divine Crow Sea and saw the 7 fire veins, they were all stunned. The scene in front of them stunned them. Less than 2 hours had passed since the Thunder Rock monarchs started killing the monarchs of the Tao of Killing. However, all the monarchs on the way to the fire veins were killed along with the 10 one-horned fire-scaled beasts. If it wasn't for the fire-scaled beasts' roars that caused the Divine Crow Sea to tremble, they wouldn't have known that someone had sneaked into the fire veins. Get the ancestral artifact. The person who sneaked in is probably as strong as the Thunder Rock monarch. Pass down my order. Get the ancestral artifact. Long Chen and Zhang Laniyue immediately felt the aura from the Divine Crow Sea behind them. Zhang Laniyue's expression changed drastically. She quickly said to Long Chen, "Hurry up. Once the ancestral artifact is out and there are so many experts around, our lives will be in danger." Long Chen nodded. He took out the Divine Crow bronze mirror with his halberd and held it in his left hand. There is indeed a fragment of the world suppression cauldron in this bronze mirror. This Tao of Killing is indeed skilled in the art of smithing. He actually used the fragment of the world suppression cauldron to forge the ancestral artifact. Long Chen held the bronze mirror and rushed towards the Divine Item Sea with Zhang Laniyue. Who dares to intrude into the Divine Crow Sea? Surrender now. As soon as Long Chen and Zhang Laniyue rushed out, hundreds of divine lights shot towards the sky and engulfed them. Wang. Long Chen pushed his battle techniques to the maximum. The halberd in his hand moved like a phantom and he managed to escape from the hundreds of divine lights. Even so, Zhang Laniyue saw that Long Chen was covered in wounds. Who is this person? He managed to escape from the attacks of hundreds of Imperial Emperors. A late-stage Imperial Emperor shouted in shock. Seal the Divine Crow Sea. We must not let this person escape. Summon the ancestral artifact. Hundreds of Imperial Emperors who had arrived first chased after Long Chen crazily. Rays of divine light rose and fell one after another, falling like rain. Long Chen carried Zhang Laniyue on his back with his halberd. Every time he struck, a few Imperial Emperors would die. After Long Chen rushed out for 1,000 meters, the number of Imperial Emperors around him did not decrease. Instead, there were more and more of them. There were even a few powerful auras that broke through the air. At this moment, there were already late-stage Imperial Emperors in the Divine Crow Sea using their ancestral artifact. In the distance, there were countless martial Emperors on the surface of the sea, densely packed together. Explode! At this critical moment, Long Chen's halberd pierced through the air and landed on the sea where the fire vein was. Chapter 903. The halberd roared and fell into the Divine Crow Sea. The array that was suppressing the fire veins above the 7 fire veins was shattered by the light from the halberd. The array left behind by Long Chen also exploded. As the halberd flew back, the 7 fire veins spat out countless tongues of magma from the bottom of the Divine Crow Sea. It was like a flaming hurricane that set off monstrous waves. One by one, the Imperial Emperors were instantly engulfed. Water and fire mixed together and made sizzling sounds. Starting from where the fire veins were, monstrous fog swept out in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. The azure sea surface was like a white tsunami. What kind of magic weapon is this person's halberd? How did it shatter the stabilizing array above the 7 fire veins in an instant? Don't chase him, quickly use the ancestral artifact to suppress the fire veins below the Divine Crow Sea. Otherwise, the entire Divine Crow Sea will be vaporized. Remember this person's face and use the ancestral artifact to contact Tao Emperor. Someone dares to cause trouble in my Divine Crow Sea. Countless voices sounded one after another. The entire Divine Crow Sea was extremely chaotic amidst the fog, fire, and water. Numerous ancestral artifacts were used by late-stage imperial emperors to suppress the fire veins below. Even so, a large amount of seawater began to dry up. The central region of the 7 fire veins had turned into a scorched earth volcano that emitted thick smoke. On the other side, Longchen carried Jean Lanyu on his back with his halberd and rushed out of the Divine Crow Sea amidst the fog. Along the way, he killed countless imperial emperors and close to 100 imperial emperors. When the ancestral artifact was summoned back, no one dared to stop him. Longchen carried Jean Lanyu's primordial energy in the Divine Crow Sea and traveled for tens of thousands of miles before looking back. There were imperial emperors moving back and forth above the Divine Crow Sea, but the thick smoke had covered almost half of the Divine Crow Sea. Luckily they used the ancestral artifact to suppress the fire veins below the Divine Crow Sea. Otherwise, with the ancestral artifact leading the way, I'm afraid they would chase after us. Jean Lanyu looked at Longchen's wounds recovering and felt a lingering fear. Longchen nodded. In order to obtain the bronze mirror, he had almost been left behind in the Divine Item Sea. Longchen said, "We can't stay here any longer. More and more imperial emperors are gathering at the center of the Divine Crow Sea." Longchen continued to flee with Jean Lanyu. Several thousand imperial emperors and the power of the ancestral artifact forcibly suppressed the erupting fire vein beneath the Divine Crow Sea. At this moment, the Divine Crow Sea was no longer the original Divine Crow Sea. The Divine Crow Sea's godly power was like fire, and there were many scorched black volcanoes standing on it. Several emperors wielding ancestral artifacts managed to disperse the mist above the Divine Crow Sea in just a few hours. Above the central region of the Divine Crow Sea, there were thousands of monarchs gathered. Everyone's face was ashen. An old man holding the heaven-measuring ruler ancestral artifact slowly stepped forward. His hair and beard were all white, and his voice was hoarse as he said, "That person broke through the encirclement of hundreds of imperial emperors and hundreds of thousands of great emperors. He even killed nearly 100 sovereign emperors. Did you record which sovereign's subordinate he was?" Among the thousands of imperial emperors, a few dozen of them had a gloomy expression. They took a step forward and threw jade scrolls into the air. "I've never seen this person before. He's not from the Divine Volcano. This person's combat prowess is incredible. I'm afraid that even the late-stage imperial emperors who have been crowned may not be his match. Most importantly, the halberd in his hand is able to kill imperial emperors. Those who were struck by the halberd would feel the pressure of Mount Tai. If it wasn't for the halberd, we wouldn't have lost so many people." Everyone spoke one after another. The images on the jade scrolls in the air kept replaying. Many imperial emperors who arrived later couldn't help but gasp when they saw the images in the sky. Longchen in the images was like a god of war. Wherever the halberd passed, it was like a god of death reaping lives. Many mid-stage imperial emperors were killed in a single strike. The white-bearded old man holding the ancestral artifact was shocked. After a while, he let out a long breath and said, "This person's combat prowess has already surpassed the Northern Foot Realm's imperial emperors. If we want to take him down, we'll need at least several perfected imperial emperors with ancestral artifacts. There's no need to chase after him. Think of a way to quickly restore order in the Divine Crow Sea and prevent the Divine Volcano from attacking. I'll report this to the sovereign." The imperial emperors heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. The Divine Volcano and the Divine Crow Sea bordered each other. The two forces often fought, so they had to be on guard. On the other hand, according to the images recorded in the Jade Scrolls, even if they sent everyone to chase after Longchen, they would probably suffer countless casualties if they couldn't kill him. The imperial emperors dispersed and began to mobilize the imperial emperors who had yet to arrive. For a time, the entire Divine Crow Sea entered a state of preparation. Hundreds of imperial emperors began to stabilize the fire vein in the Divine Crow Sea and tried to restore it to its original state. After everyone dispersed, the white-bearded old man returned to an island in the Divine Crow Sea. The central island should have been luxurious and glorious, but now, nearly half of it was scorched earth. He stretched out his right hand, and the inscriptions on the heaven-measuring ruler flickered as it communicated with the laws of heaven and earth. A moment later, the void in front of him rippled like water. "Why are you looking for me so urgently?" The ripples were from the human Tao Sovereign. The human Tao Sovereign's expression was not good. Half of his body seemed to have turned into white bones, as if he had just experienced a difficult battle. The white-bearded old man took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "The array suppressing the 7 fire veins under the Divine Crow Sea has been destroyed. Many of the islands in the Divine Crow Sea have been scorched earth. Black smoke volcanoes have formed in the center of the 7 fire veins. The flame suppression copper mirror under the fire veins has also disappeared without a trace." Bang! As soon as the old man finished speaking, the human Tao Sovereign suddenly exploded, and the transmission ripples shook. The heaven-measuring ruler ancestral artifact even hummed continuously. The white-bearded old man continued in a deep voice, "The person who did all this is the young man named Longchen you mentioned before." After that, the old man even spread out the images in the jade slips behind him. Longchen? How could he have such battle prowess? The human Tao Sovereign's expression completely changed. He had sent 3 peak Imperial Emperors back, and he had kept their life tokens, but in the end, only the living corpse Imperial Emperor's token had shattered. Therefore, he thought that the living corpse Imperial Emperor had died for some reason, and that the other 2 had captured Longchen. He never thought that not only was Longchen still alive, but he had also turned the Divine Crow Sea upside down, and even took away the copper mirror. He was furious, especially about the copper mirror. He had spent more than 10 years on it, and now it had been taken away by Longchen. Phew! The human Tao Sovereign let out a long breath and forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart. A look of shock flashed across his face. Chapter 904. The human Tao Emperor said that he wanted to suppress Longchen personally. However, the white-bearded old man's face did not look any better. After pondering for a moment, he said in a low voice, "This person's cultivation speed has exceeded everyone's expectations. If he steps into the Emperor realm in a few months, won't he become a huge threat?" The old man's meaning was self-evident. Ever since the human Tao Emperor went to the Goddess Wa clan, the order to capture Longchen had been passed through his hands. He was very clear about Longchen's improvement in strength. In a short time, Longchen's battle prowess had undergone an earth-shattering change. Looking at the entire Northfoot territory, only under the control of the Ancient Saint Emperor could there be such a heaven-defying talent in the Ancient Saint Divine world. Those people were either from the Tianyuan Divine Clan or from the Primal Chaos Divine Clan. If Longchen continued to improve at this speed, the human Tao Emperor would lose the initiative and might even be defeated. The human Tao Emperor naturally knew what the old man was worried about. However, at this moment, he could not leave the Void Soul Mountain. "I will return as soon as possible. In a few months, even if he steps into the Emperor realm, I will not be afraid. I have a sure-win item in my hands." The human Tao Emperor did not seem worried. The white-bearded old man nodded and replied, "I hope I am overthinking." On the other side, Longchen and Zhang Lanua left the Divine Crow Sea and headed towards the central plains of the Northfoot territory. The news of the chaos in the Divine Crow Sea spread like a tsunami in the Northfoot territory. More and more information about Longchen was known to the public. Zhang Lanua saw Longchen suddenly change his direction and asked, "Where are you going? Your actions this time will definitely anger the human Tao Sovereign. I'm afraid he will return soon." Longchen nodded. He knew what Zhang Lanua was worried about. He said in a deep voice, "I will try my best to improve my cultivation. I will also leave a way out. Even if I cannot defeat him, I will not die in the Northfoot territory. This time, we will go to the Ancient Saint Shaanxi first." Ancient Saint Shaanxi was a neutral force in the Ancient Saint Divine world. It was also the largest trading company in the Ancient Saint Divine world. Zhang Lanua nodded and followed behind Longchen. After a while, she suddenly moved closer to Longchen and whispered, "Ancient Saint Shaanxi, isn't Yin Mayer here? And I am their guarantor." Is she your wife or concubine? Long Lanua to ask. He did intend to visit Yunmei and the others in ancient St. Shaanxi, but there was another reason. The third person who possessed the Imperial Lord's body was an ancient Saint Shaanxi. With Long Chen's Long, the Emperor's ancient saint divine Emperor. Zhan Lanua raised an eyebrow, but she did not show any displeasure. Instead, she muttered to herself, "Two sisters, ha? That's not too bad. You really don't mind?" Longchen smiled bitterly and shook his head. Zhan Lanua glared at Longchen fiercely. If she was not wearing a long dress and not a battle armor, she would have kicked Longchen a few times. She snorted coldly, "Of course I mind. But this is human nature." Longchen was startled, but he soon understood Zhan Lanua's temperament. Imperial Emperor Zhan Kuang had many wives and concubines. Influenced by what she heard, Zhan Lanua did not care about the number of wives and concubines. In the ancient saint divine world, there are many men who have many wives and concubines. Even the kings of ordinary countries have countless concubines. It is already good enough that you only have 2 women. Zhan Lanua continued. Longchen did not know how to respond. Zhan Lanua suddenly moved closer to Longchen and whispered in his ear, "Do you like to see me wearing a long dress or battle armor?" The sky gradually darkened. Longchen could feel the strange fragrance coming from Zhan Lanua's body. His heartbeat quickened and he replied, "You look better when you fight me in battle armor. But the long dress is much prettier." Zhan Lanua thought about how Longchen hid his cultivation level while she suppressed her own cultivation level and was abused countless times. She could not help but laugh. She suddenly said, "Today, let's fight again. You suppress your cultivation level to the same level as mine." After that, Zhan Lanua actually took the opportunity to land on a huge white stone hill beside a stream in the forest. Longchen was startled and a smile appeared on his face. He followed closely behind. But before he landed, Zhan Lanua had already started to undress under the moonlight. The hazy body and the almost perfect curves caused Longchen to freeze on the spot. "After you've seen enough, I'll put it on." Zhan Lanua turned sideways to Longchen. Her words were extremely shy and teasing. "I've seen enough, I've seen enough." Longchen was stunned for more than 10 breaths. He felt his blood boiling. He quickly probed into his divine soul. He found that the remnant soul of the Imperial Lord had already fallen asleep and there was no reaction. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Bang! A ray of divine light shot towards Longchen. Longchen hurriedly suppressed his cultivation to the first level of the Imperial Emperor realm and punched out. As the two exchanged blows, Longchen could even see Zhan Lanua's blushing cheeks. Boom boom boom. The two exchanged more than 10 blows in a blink of an eye. Even though their cultivation levels were suppressed to the same level, Zhan Lanua still did not have the upper hand. Longchen was no longer the person who had just walked out of the remnant land. After fusing with the remnant body of the Imperial Lord and the coronation, his body had undergone earth-shattering changes. The two were soon on the ground, just like the first time they met in the remnant land. However, Zhan Lanua did not have the slightest intention to stop. Every punch landed on his flesh. This feeling reminded Longchen of the nickname he gave her in the beginning. Crazy woman. Zhan Lanua quickly turned back to Tu Lian. She suddenly hooked her arms around Longchen's neck and flipped him over. She whispered in his ear, "Do you still want to see?" Upon hearing this, Longchen's breathing suddenly quickened. Although he was not inexperienced, he did not know what to do when facing Zhan Lanua. Longchen nodded and his aura began to dissipate. Bang! As soon as his aura dissipated, Zhan Lanua punched him to the ground. "Ha, men!" Zhan Lanua was wearing her battle armor. She laughed so hard that even the dirt on her body could not cover her beautiful face. The silver-white battle armor gave her a sense of wildness. Whoosh! As soon as she finished speaking, Longchen turned into a ray of light and rushed out from the ground. He held her in his arms and rushed into the stream not far away. Chapter 905. The water was so clear that one could see the bottom. As the water rippled, the two of them took off their clothes. They chatted and played with each other. The moonlight and water shone on Jean Lanua's fair skin, making her look even more beautiful. The sound of the water became louder and louder. After a few hours, the water ripples faded and the sound disappeared. By the stream, the wind blew and the grass swayed. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Jean Lanua was lying on Long Chen's chest. Her beautiful body was enough to make people suffocate. Jean Lanua's cheeks were still flushed. She whispered into Long Chen's chest, "If you think I'm more beautiful in a long dress, I'll never wear a suit of armor again." Long Chen nodded and smiled. "It's fine if you don't wear it. After all, you can't defeat me. I'll help you solve the problem you want to solve." Jean Lanua's heart was filled with warmth. She had never admired a man so much since she started cultivating during the Warring States period. She knew that she must not miss out on Long Chen. She was willing to accompany him to stand at the top of the ancient Saint Divine World. She was also willing to accompany him to die in the hands of the human Tao Emperor. At this moment, she made up her mind. Jean Lanua's breath weakened. She laid on Long Chen's chest and fell asleep. Long Chen covered her body with her clothes. His eyes stared at the starry sky. His heart could not calm down for a long time. It was a sleepless night. When the warmth of the sunrise engulfed the two of them, Jean Lanua stood up with her face flushed red. Her beautiful body was in full view. She took out a long dress and put it on. However, she saw that Long Chen was still staring at the sky. She could not help but ask, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about a woman," Long Chen replied subconsciously. Jean Lanua tightened the dress around her waist. Her slim waist outlined her perfect figure. She could not help but frown. "If you miss her, then go find her. Why do you have to say so much here?" Jean Lanua was unhappy. She felt that although Long Chen's cultivation was high, he was a little slow when it came to the relationship between men and women. Long Chen turned around. He could see the jealousy in Jean Lanua's heart. He walked forward and held Jean Lanua in his arms. "Do you want to see her, after that?" Long Chen waved his right hand, and an ice coffin appeared in front of them. Jean Lanua looked over and couldn't help but be stunned. Yi Hailan was inside the coffin. Jean Lanua could not help but be envious of Yi Hailan's perfect figure and flawless face. However, she could also feel that there was no sign of life in Yi Hailan. She could feel the disappointment and frustration in Long Chen's heart. She leaned over Long Chen's chest and asked, "Is she also an elder sister?" B. Long Chen shook his head and said, "She's not my woman. She's my confidant." He still remembered the scene when Yi Hailan left him in the 10 Directions Heaven domain. Yi Hailan's arrogance made it impossible for her to be with Long Chen. "Let's talk as we walk." Long Chen planned to tell Jean Lanua everything about the corpse world. The two flew through the air. They felt the cold morning wind blowing around them. They kept talking. Jean Lanua became their most loyal listener. Other than the Primal Chaos Golden Codex and the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul, Long Chen told her everything about his past life. He had hidden all these for too long. This discussion lasted for several days. Jean Lanua's eyes turned red countless times. In the end, she only said, "She's too arrogant. She made herself suffer." Long Chen only replied, "I'm the one who let her down." Yi Hailan died of depression in his past life. In this life, he was willing to give up his life for Long Chen. He was not willing to be with Long Chen. Jean Lanua was speechless. She was different from Yi Hailan. She would not let Long Chen slip away from her. She brought Long Chen through several teleportation arrays. After 10 days, they finally arrived at Shanghai. Such teleportation arrays were rarely used in the ancient Saint Divine World. Most of them were in the hands of ancient Saint Shanghai. Ancient Saint Shanghai was spread across the entire ancient Saint Divine World. With such a scale, ancient Sage Shanghai had become a neutral power that almost no one in the ancient Sage Divine World dared to provoke. Ancient Saint Shanghai in the North Foot territory was a merchant guild the size of Divine Crow Sea. The merchant guild existed in the form of a city. There were such merchant guilds in all the major territories. These merchant guilds were collectively known as Ancient Saint Shanghai. Zhang Lanhua sent Yun Meier and the others to Shanghai. She even became their guarantor. Hence, she was familiar with this place. The Yun family chose to settle down in the North City. They also joined the Pill faction. Zhang Lanhua brought Long Chen to the North City. Along the way, Long Chen looked at the city in a new light. The weakest cultivator he saw on the streets was a mid-stage martial emperor. There were also plenty of imperial emperors. The imperial lord's remnant soul even sensed 2 or 3 auras that were not weaker than imperial emperors. Zhang Lanhua saw that this was Long Chen's first time here, so she said, "Ancient Saint Shanghai has its own rules. Any battle here must go through Shanghai's judgment. Those who act without permission will only face death. The Yun family should not be in any danger here. Don't worry." Long Chen nodded. The two did not slow down. After 6 hours, they saw a huge signboard in the middle of the street. North City Pill Field. East, West, North, South, life weapons, talismans and pills. This is the layout of every merchant guild under Ancient Saint Shanghai. Zhang Lanhua signaled Long Chen to continue. The shops in North City Pill Field were divided into 4 categories: Heaven, Earth, Black and Yellow. The yellow category shops were specially prepared for newcomers. Yellow 7th Street, shop number 374. This was the shop that Zhang Lanhua chose for the Yun family before she left. There were probably thousands of shops like this in North City Pill Field. Cloud Sea Pill Pavilion. When Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua arrived at the entrance of the shop, Long Chen immediately knew that they were at the right place. The shop was only 100 square meters. It was the smallest building in the city, but there was an endless stream of people coming in and out. Business seemed to be booming. Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua quickly followed the crowd and entered. They saw a Yun family elder and 7 other martial emperors busy. Elder Yun. Zhang Lanhua was the first to call out. The Yun family elder looked over and quickly greeted Zhang Lanhua when he saw her. Zhang Lanhua vouched for them in the merchant guild. It was a huge favor. When he saw Long Chen, he smiled and said happily, "Young master and Miss Lanhua, please follow me. Miss Meier will be very happy to know that you are here." Long Chen nodded, but he missed Yun Meier very much. The 3 of them walked out of the street one after another. After a detailed discussion, Long Chen was not surprised. In a short period of time, the Yun family had opened 19 shops on the Yellow Street. Chapter 906. A Xian grade shop was equivalent to gaining the recognition of Ancient Saint Shanghai. One could get a stall in many of the markets held by the Shanghai Hall in the city center. On the other hand, once a Xian grade shop was established, it would be assessed by the Shanghai Chamber of Commerce every year. Only then would the shop have room for further promotion. If the shop could become a heaven grade shop step by step, one could even have the chance to invest in Ancient Saint Shanghai and set up a branch in each of the major regions. The elder behind them shook his head and sighed. He did not say much and only replied, "It's a long story. Let's talk about it when you see Miss Meier." Under the guidance of the elder, Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua came to a courtyard tens of thousands of meters away from the shop. The courtyard was less than 1,000 meters in size. These courtyards were very different from the ones Long Chen saw when he entered the city. Some of the buildings in the city center spanned tens of thousands of miles. It was a magnificent sight. The elder sent the 2 of them into the courtyard. He bowed and left, saying, "There are still many things to do in the shop. I shall take my leave first." Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua returned the greeting and walked into the courtyard. As soon as the 2 of them entered the courtyard, they saw Yun Meier bustling about. There were almost 100 people in the courtyard. Yun Meier's body froze. She saw Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua from afar. "Long Chen, Sister Lanhua, why are you here?" Yun Meier was surprised. She threw away the things in her hands and went to greet them. When she was a few meters away from Longchen, she suddenly stopped. Her charming eyes revealed a mischievous smile. She circled him twice and looked at Jean Lanua, who was beside him. She teased, "Why are you two so close? Seems like I have another love rival." Longchen was stunned. Jean Lanua's face blushed. Yunmei rushed to Longchen's side and hugged his arm. She whispered in his ear, "TSK TSK, I didn't expect a blockhead like you to be enlightened. You can even take down Sister Lanua." Longchen was speechless. Yunmei could tell that his relationship with Jean Lanua was not ordinary. "Let's talk inside." Longchen laughed awkwardly. Yunmei pinched his waist. She turned and stopped Jean Lanua. She said, "Sister Lanua, let's talk inside." The surrounding men and women who were constantly sorting out the pill recipes and accounts widened their eyes when they saw this scene. They looked at Longchen with envy and jealousy. "What are you looking at?" "That's the guarantor of our Cloud Sea shop and Mei Er's husband. Hurry up and do your work." Inside the room, calm. Bye. 2. After several hours, the two women finally walked out. However, when Yunmei looked at Longchen, her eyes became even more charming. Longchen's heart itched when she looked at him, but he also felt that she was scheming something. On the other hand, Jean Lanua was blushing. She didn't say anything. Yunmei hugged Longchen's neck and sat in his arms. "I didn't expect things to develop so quickly. How are you going to spend the night? Are you going to accompany Sister Lanua or me?" "Sister?" With this change in address, Longchen knew that these two women had probably reached an agreement. Yunmei wanted to tease Longchen. Before Longchen could reply, she whispered in his ear, "How about we do it like that time when Sister Qing Xian and I did?" Jean Lanua's face was burning. She didn't expect Yunmei to be so bold. She quickly changed the topic. "Why don't you stay here? Why don't you apply for a shop in the Xian Street? It's too close to the city center." Yunmei let go of Longchen after Jean Lanua spoke. She stood up and leaned on Longchen. "It's not that we don't want to apply for a shop in the Xian Street. It's just that we haven't been able to pass the examination. Since you're here today, you can have some fun in the city. Tomorrow is the examination day. I will try again." Longchen frowned and asked, "Is there someone behind this? If not, why can't you pass the examination with your strength?" Yunmei didn't want to talk about it. "No, I will handle this. We should pass the examination tomorrow." Longchen didn't ask anymore. Yunmei didn't want to talk about it. Yunmei held onto Longchen's arm and pulled him up from the chair. She then held onto Jean Lanua's arm and walked out of the courtyard. She smiled, "Today is a celebration for Sister Lanua becoming my sister. Everything we buy today will be on your tab." The entire city was as vast as an overlord's residence. They still hadn't finished exploring the North City Elixir Land until midnight. Of course, this speed was based on Yunmei and Jean Lanua's speed. Longchen was speechless at the speed at which the woman was shopping. "Let's stay here for the night. Tomorrow's examination will be held at the Yellow Square a few miles away from here." Yunmei brought Longchen and Jean Lanua to a nearby restaurant. When the two women and a man entered the restaurant, they attracted a lot of attention. Many men couldn't take their eyes off Yunmei and Jean Lanua. Under everyone's gaze, Yunmei was bold. She whispered into Longchen's ear, "Are you going to get a room?" Longchen walked to the front of the counter and said, "Shopkeeper, 3 superior rooms." Hiss. Before Longchen could finish his sentence, he felt a sharp pain on his waist. Yunmei glared at Longchen and whispered, "Are you an idiot?" Pfft, Jean Lanua couldn't help but laugh. She took the initiative and said, "I'll wait for you upstairs." The manager was stunned. He looked at Jean Lanua and Yunmei, then looked at Longchen and smiled, "You're so lucky." After saying that, he tactfully handed over a room's array key to Longchen. When Yunmei saw that everyone in the restaurant was looking at them, even she couldn't help but blush a little. She pulled Longchen and walked upstairs. Isn't that the lady boss of the Cloud Sea shop? She really has a seductive face. Just looking at her makes my heart itch. Who's the other woman? I've never seen her before. She shouldn't be this beautiful. No wonder Yun Mayer didn't care about Lu Weidian. She already has a lover. Looks like she won't be able to pass tomorrow's examination. My son and daughter share the same husband. If I can have these two women by my side, I'm willing to die tomorrow. Chapter 907. Qing Xian was considerate and gentle like water. Yun Mayer was charming and seductive, passionate like fire. Yi Hailan was a celestial being, proud and aloof. Long Chen looked at Zhang Lanhua, who was beside the bed, and couldn't help but feel that being able to meet them in this life was already a great fortune. Yun Mayer woke up and hugged Long Chen tightly. She asked, "How long will you be here this time? When are you leaving?" Long Chen could naturally hear the disappointment in Yun Mayer's voice. He replied, "I'll be leaving soon, I still have a lot of things to do." Yun Mayer's usually playful and charming face showed a trace of disappointment. However, she quickly nodded and said, "Wake up, when you become stronger, I'll be relying on you." Looking at Zhang Lanhua and Yun Mayer's naked bodies, Long Chen felt his blood boiling even though they had sex yesterday. He quickly put on his clothes and walked out of the door. Yun Mayer and Zhang Lanhua couldn't help but laugh when they saw Long Chen's appearance. Outside the restaurant, many people had already left. The promotion ceremony was held at a plaza a few miles away from the restaurant. There wasn't a fixed time for such a ceremony. Just like the North City Pill Land, once the number of applicants reached 300, the Xian Pill House would nominate a representative to conduct the ceremony. Yun Mayer and Zhang Lanhua walked slowly. When they saw Long Chen looking at them, they couldn't help but stare at him fiercely. Long Chen recalled yesterday's pleasure and couldn't help but cough lightly. He quickly went forward to support them. Yun Mayer said, "Let's hurry up, the ceremony will begin in 2 hours." The promotion plaza was 13,000 miles wide. This distance might be extremely vast for an ordinary person, but it was nothing in this city filled with emperors. In the center of the plaza, there were 10 men and women in gray robes. Each of them had a black symbol on their back. The 10 of them stood on a high platform more than 10 meters in the east, overlooking the entire square. Under the lead of Yun Mayer, Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua entered the plaza from the west. As soon as they entered, they saw the 10 examiners on the stage. The 2 long lines in the north and south of the square were all spectators. There were a total of 100 pill cauldrons in the center area, and there were 3 to 4 people standing still beside each cauldron. Yun Mayer said to Long Chen, "You two go to the south and find a place to keep watch. I will go to the place where the Dan cauldron is and hand over the information and the Dan cauldron recipe." Long Chen and Zhang Lanhua walked towards a street in the south. However, just as the two of them were walking, they both felt a murderous intent. Zhang Lanhua was the first to turn around. Her gaze landed on the high platform in the east. Long Chen had no intention of turning around. At such a close distance, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul had already helped him lock onto this person. Long Chen couldn't help but smile. This person was the third person who possessed the Emperor Lord's remnant body that he was looking for. He was also a little puzzled. He didn't know why this person was so blatantly revealing his murderous intent towards him. "Let's go and have a look." Long Chen walked in front of Zhang Lanhua and said lightly. Zhang Lanhua nodded but didn't take this person to heart. She clearly knew Long Chen's current combat strength. This person wasn't an Emperor realm expert. He wasn't a threat to Long Chen at all. On the high platform, Lu Weidian was one of the 10 examiners. He looked like a middle-aged man with a mole at the corner of his mouth. He wasn't exactly handsome. At this moment, there was a cold glint in his eyes. Beside him, a few people in black robes saw Yun Mayer walking towards the Dan cauldron area and couldn't help but smile. One of the old ladies standing beside Lu Weidian sneered and said sarcastically, "This Yun Mayer really looks like a seductress." but it seems like other people don't like you. Early this morning, I heard the news that Yun Mayer was spending the night with another peerless beauty. Shut up. Lu Weidian snorted and said in a low voice, she's just a bitch. A slut who can sleep with anyone, a skinny middle-aged man beside him said. This Yun Mayer's Yunhai shop is developing very quickly. If it was in the past, she would have already owned a Xian shop. This is the 4th time she has applied. If you reject her again, don't you think it's a little inappropriate? Lu Weidian squinted his eyes and stared at Yun Mayer from afar. He sneered and ignored this person. On the square, Yun Mayer felt Lu Weixian's gaze and frowned. She turned to an old man beside her and said, is everything done? Are you sure Lehua shop will help us this time? Miss Mayer, don't worry. Lehua shop is very interested in our series of sales. The old man from the Yun clan said in a low voice, this time, their people are part of the audit team. They won't be disturbed by Lu Weidian. On the other side. When Longchen saw the way Lu Weidian stared at Yun Mayer, his originally doubtful belief instantly cleared up. Longchen sneered and said, what a coincidence. He originally planned to stay with Yun Mayer for a few more days before looking for Lu Weidian. But he didn't expect to meet him today. Zhang Lanhua stood beside Longchen and said in a low voice, this guy has his eyes on Mayer. It seems like the reason why Mayer couldn't get the Xian shop is because of him. But don't act rashly. After all, this is the Chamber of Commerce's city. While Zhang Lanhua was speaking, all the shop members were already standing in front of the pill cauldrons. On the stage, an old man with a goatee wearing a black robe stepped forward and said loudly, all applicants, submit the sales and profits of the past 3 months. If there are no mistakes, we will refine the pills with the highest sales volume in the shop. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, all the shop members in the central district took a few jade slips and walked up the stage. Yun Mayer was among them. Just as she walked up the stage, Lu Weidian came up to her and was about to take the jade slips. Yun Mayer wanted to dodge to the side, but Lu Weidian moved and blocked in front of her. His right hand reached for the jade slips in her hand. Lu Weixian's cultivation level was at the 8th level of the Imperial Emperor realm. He was not someone Yun Mayer could dodge. Not only did Lu Weidian grab the jade scroll, but he also grabbed Yun Mayer's jade-like hand. He lowered his voice and said playfully, bitch, after today, you will regret not obeying me the previous few times. Presumptuous. Longchen, who was in the crowd, immediately noticed everything. His heart was filled with anger, and killing intent surged all over his body. Longchen's shout caused everyone's gaze to fall on him. Chapter 908. Yun Mayer hid behind the dignified lady of Lehua shop with an aggrieved look. She did not even dare to look back at Longchen. In the past, she was able to handle the corpse world, whether it was the ancient desolate land or the 10 directions sky domain. There were many perverts like Lu Weidian. She could easily fool them with some simple tricks. With such a man, she could even use her charm to play him in the palm of her hand, and she wouldn't be at a disadvantage at all. But ever since she married Longchen in the Remnant Land and became Longchen's woman, she did not use her beauty to do business. This made her path much more difficult. She had been to such an assessment meeting 4 times. On the other side, Lu Weidian looked at the dignified lady and sneered. He did not say anything and looked at Longchen. Everyone heard Longchen shout clearly. How should I address you? You're quite imposing. Lu Weidian sneered. Longchen squinted his eyes as if he was looking at a dead man. Before Longchen could say anything, the goateed old man standing on the high platform said in a deep voice, Lu Weidian, this is the promotion ceremony after all. Don't create trouble here. Lu Weidian seemed to be a little afraid of this old man. He nodded, looked deeply at Longchen, and then retreated. Zhang Lanhua felt the cold murderous intent from Longchen and said, Mayer came down from the stage. I'll go take a look. Longchen nodded and Zhang Lanhua quickly walked out. As soon as Zhang Lanhua left, a few imperial emperors near Longchen whispered to him, brother, the aura you released just now is not bad. However, we advise you not to touch outside heaven. Lu doesn't know that Lu Waidian has suppressed the Cloud Sea shop several times. But Lu Weixian's son is the vice president of the Lu Chamber of Commerce. The Pavilion Chamber of Commerce is about to have an Earth-level shop. They can mobilize at least dozens of imperial emperors. 7 or 8 of them have been crowned. When Longchen heard their conversation, he couldn't help but sneer. There were several imperial emperors in the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, Earth-grade shops, and dozens of imperial emperors. Thank you for your reminder. Longchen thanked them through telepathy, but the murderous intent in his heart did not diminish at all. Not far away, Zhan Lanhua walked over with Yunmei. Yunmei lowered her head and bit her lower lip. Her charming phoenix eyes were even a little red. Seeing this, Longchen's heart was filled with pity. He reached out and pulled Yunmei to his side. He said softly, "It's been hard on you these days." Yunmei suddenly started to sob and lay on Longchen's chest. Zhan Lanhua couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. Yunmei wanted to lead the Yun clan to establish a foothold in Shanghai City. After a while, Longchen bent down and whispered in Yunmei's ear, "Soon, your husband will help you kill him." "Kill him?" Yunmei's body trembled in Longchen's arms. Then, she smiled through her tears. That day in the 10 Directions celestial domain, in order to force Longchen to express his feelings, she walked onto the stage. That day, Longchen said to her, "If you don't want to go with him, I'll help you kill him." Today, it was still the same, but with the addition of the word husband. Yunmei saw that everyone was staring at her and Longchen. She quickly got out of Longchen's arms and whispered to Longchen, "It's okay. With Lihua shop around, Cloud Sea shop will definitely get a Xian-level shop. As for this person, it's okay to spare his life. In Shanghai City, he won't dare to do anything to me." Longchen knew Yunmei's thoughts. She was worried about Longchen. Luyu shop was really powerful among the Xian-level shops in North City. On the other side, on the high platform, the 10 inspectors of the Xian-level shops had finished the examination. As a result, 3 shops failed to meet the requirements, while the rest passed. Yunmei couldn't help smiling. In the past, Cloud Sea shop couldn't pass this stage of the examination. It seemed that Lihua shop really wanted to help Cloud Sea shop this time. They didn't pay attention to Lu Waidian. Qina shop, refining purple moon breath holding elixir. Shuiyue shop, refining 4-flower elixir, dragon explosion elixir. Qianka shop, refining the 3-flower elixir, earth elemental escape elixir. After the announcement, everyone's eyes all fell on the cauldron in the center of the square. This round of examination was to confirm whether the shops that passed the first round really had the elixir mentioned in the jade slip. Under normal circumstances, it was almost impossible for shops to fail. Most of the shops that passed the examination had the strength to do so. The promotion ceremony was a rule in Shanghai City. As long as the shops met the requirements, they would pass. Most of the people watching on both sides were staff of various shops. For them, once their shop had a Xian-level shop, it meant that they were completely out of the inspection stage of the ancient sage Shanghai. Divine power surged and the power of raging flames rushed towards them. The cauldrons in the square roared. Within a few hours, the shops had successfully refined elixirs and handed them to the 10 people on the high platform. But as time passed, Yunmei's face gradually changed. Longchen and Zhan Lanhua couldn't help but frown. All the shops were about to close their cauldrons, but the people in Cloud Sea shop were still refining elixirs. How can this be? These few early-stage Imperial Emperor alchemists were personally trained by me. They should have no problem refining the same kind of 3-flower elixir. Yunmei was very anxious. Just as he finished speaking, the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul had already sensed that the aura in the cauldron was starting to go berserk. He said to Longchen, "There's something wrong with the cauldron. It's going to explode." Longchen's figure suddenly disappeared. Just as he disappeared from his original spot, the originally calm pill cauldron suddenly rumbled and exploded in an instant. The destructive aura spread in all directions. There were even streaks of yellowish-green liquid splashing out. Longchen was extremely fast, but he was still one step too late. The divine light in his hand blocked the two people closest to him from the explosive aura. Ah! Shrill screams suddenly sounded. The bodies of the other two alchemists were instantly destroyed. The most terrifying thing was the yellow-green liquid. When the liquid fell, their originally damaged bodies directly turned into pus. Even their divine souls sizzled and emitted green smoke. How can this be? How can this be? Yunmei seemed to have lost her soul. She stood there in a daze. They came from the Warring States period. In order to train these few early-stage Imperial Emperor alchemists, they used a large amount of resources. They even changed the rules of selling elixirs. They specialized in selling a series of 3-flower low-tier elixirs. Chapter 909. Early-stage Sovereign Emperor alchemists were not rare in the Yellow Shop. Most of them were not recruited by sovereigns, so their combat strength was generally not strong. Many of them were even crowned in the Shaanxi city before stepping into the Sovereign Emperor realm. The Shaanxi city had its own rules. Being crowned in the Shaanxi city was much simpler than being crowned in the outside world. Ancient sage Shaanxi city even had a specific rule. As long as one met the standards, they could be crowned. However, anyone who was crowned in the city could not leave the city. Even if they broke through to the Sovereign Emperor realm, they were not allowed to privately recruit an army of the Sovereign Emperor realm. For example, the few early-stage Sovereign Emperors that Yunmei had nurtured were all under the principle of mutual benefit. Moreover, they had used up all their resources to allow them to be crowned in the city. These few people consumed almost 50% of the shop's profits every month. However, now that the cauldron had exploded, 2 of them had their bodies destroyed and their souls severely injured. The surrounding people were shocked, but they remained silent. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the relationship between the two. So many people's cauldrons were fine. Only Yunmei's cauldron had exploded and 2 sovereign emperors' bodies were destroyed. If Longchen had not made a move, these 4 sovereign emperors would have died. At that time, the Cloud Sea City would have been expelled from the Shaanxi City if they had not obtained the Black Shop yet. Take them away first. Longchen gestured for the 2 sovereign emperors behind him to take the other 2 sovereign emperors' souls and retreat. He looked at them and could not help but shake his head. These few sovereign emperors were ridiculously weak. They could only suppress sovereigns. If they encountered someone of the same level, it would be difficult for them to last a few moves. However, when he thought about how this was the Shaanxi city, he felt relieved. After all, they only needed to refine pills at this level. Their combat strength was not the main point. On the other side, Lu Weidian, who was on the high platform, saw Yunmei's anger and sneered. Then, he shouted, "Nonsense, when did you see me tampering with the cauldron? The Cloud Sea City does not have the strength of a black shop. They tried to get away with it time and time again. Now, they are trapped in their own trap." The examiners beside him could not help but shake their heads, but no one said anything. Even the dignified woman from the Lahua shop looked gloomy and did not step forward. Originally, they wanted to help the Cloud Sea City, but now the Cloud Sea City store. There was no need to continue offending Lu Weidian. Bang! A huge piece of the bronze cauldron broke through the air and flew straight towards Lu Weidian. Lu Weidian's cauldron as he saw the cauldron. A Longchen's cauldron top. Li's Kai. Longchen stared at the 10 examiners on the stage and sneered, "Everyone seems to know what this thing is. Even an idiot wouldn't use this thing to refine pills." Cadian. The few examiners remained silent as they looked at Lu Weidian. They didn't want to get involved in this matter, so silence was naturally the best way to deal with it. Lu Weidian was different. He looked at Longchen with anger in his heart. Ever since he saw Yunmei, he was subdued by her seductive temperament. A woman who had just entered Shanghai. Usually, she would be taken in as long as he gave her some benefits. Yunmei did not give him the slightest chance. She even publicly rejected his help. That was why he made things difficult for Yunmei during the promotion ceremony. He wanted to force her to submit to him. In his heart, he had already treated Yunmei as his own. His perverted emotions made him pay close attention to Yunmei. Yesterday, Longchen, Yunmei, and Zhang Lanhua stayed in the restaurant. He received the news before the sun rose. Today, he only wanted to chase Yunmei out of Shanghai. Then, he would capture her and torture her. Then, he would kill her to vent his anger. As for Longchen, he already had a plan. Once Longchen walked out of Shanghai City, he would send people to surround and kill him. He stared at Longchen and said, "Who are you? You have no right to speak in Shanghai City. Get out of my way." Longchen was so angry that he laughed. He jumped onto the stage and his aura soared to the sky. The explosive divine power caught everyone's attention. Zhang Lanhua and Yunmei's expressions changed. They were afraid that Longchen would attack. In Shanghai City, once a private fight broke out, the first person to attack would die. Fortunately, Longchen did not attack. He only continued to release his divine power. After more than 10 breaths, people in red robes appeared from all directions. These people were all in the middle stage of the Imperial Emperor realm. The divine power they released was much stronger than ordinary Imperial Emperors. When the people in red robes appeared, they immediately looked at Longchen who was standing on the stage. When they sensed Longchen's cultivation, they could not help but raise their eyebrows. With such an aura, he was at least in the late stage of the Imperial Emperor realm. Judging from his appearance, he was not from Shanghai City. One could imagine his combat strength. When the leader saw that Longchen did not intend to attack, he heaved a sigh of relief. He stepped forward and bowed, "Senior, thank you for following the rules of ancient Saint Shanghai City. May I know if you would like to fight?" When the people around saw this, they were all stunned. What is this guy's cultivation? Is he in the late stage of the Imperial Emperor realm? How can this be fake? It seems like we have misjudged him. Otherwise, why would these people in red robes be so polite? Is he really going to fight with Liu in Shanghai City? I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Yunmei could not help but cover her mouth. She felt like she was in a dream when she saw the people in red robes bowing in front of Longchen. She did not expect that Longchen's strength would change so drastically in just 2 years. Zhang Lanhua, who was standing beside her, could not help but smile. On the other side, everyone on the high platform stared with their eyes wide open. When Longchen saved the people in red robes, his aura was not obvious. They subconsciously thought that he should be in the middle stage of the Imperial Emperor realm. They did not expect Longchen to be in the late stage of the Imperial Emperor realm. Most likely, he had been crowned. A crowned late stage of the Imperial Emperor realm was vastly different from a middle stage of the Imperial Emperor realm. At the very least, he should have an Emperor realm expert behind him. Lu Weidian, who was standing at the side, was also stunned for a moment. However, he quickly regained his composure and coldly snorted, "This is Shanghai City. I have no enmity with you. What right do you have to challenge me to a battle?" Although Lu Weixian's cultivation was at level 8 of the Imperial Emperor realm, he had not been crowned and had used a large number of elixirs. Chapter 9-10. Lu Weixian's cowardice made the people around him booed. On the contrary, Longchen pointed to the fragments of the pill cauldron on the ground and said coldly, "Yunmei is the president of the Cloud Sea Store, and I am her husband." Yunmei stood not far away. Hearing Longchen's words in front of everyone, she couldn't help blushing, but she couldn't hide her joy from the bottom of her heart. Since she met Longchen had always been able to hold up the sky for her. The red-robed people on the side glanced at the fragments of the pill cauldron and already knew what was going on. They couldn't help but shake their heads. They had long known that Lu Cheng was suppressing a newly established yellow store. But it was really unnecessary to disrespect Lu Cheng for a yellow store. However, if Longchen really wanted to make a ruling, they could only deal with it impartially. After all, Longchen's cultivation was here, and he couldn't be fooled at will. Husband. These two words were extremely harsh in Lu Weixian's ears, making his chest rise and fall violently, and he was burning with anger. Good, good. He shouted, since you are standing up for the Cloud Sea store, it is a problem between the stores. If you want to fight, you will be an enemy of the Lucheng Chamber of Commerce. I accept his ruling. Please arrange it, red-robed judges. The red-robed judge nodded and said respectfully to Longchen, Senior, do you want to start a battle between the two stores? Then it won't be your battle alone. If you take a step back, we will definitely investigate carefully today. As long as the Cloud Sea store meets the requirements, we will personally supervise the next review. The onlookers nodded, and they all understood the meaning of the red-robed man. Although Longchen's battle strength was strong, Yunmeier's Cloud Sea store was completely incomparable to the Lucheng Chamber of Commerce. If Longchen accepted the ruling on behalf of the Cloud Sea store, it would no longer be his business alone. Yunmeier stood not far away, with a worried look on her face. After all, the Lucheng Chamber of Commerce was about to be promoted to the Earth level, and there were many late-stage sovereign emperors in it. Such a ruling was clearly unfair. But just as she was about to speak, Zhang Lanhua walked to her side and pulled her back. She shook her head and whispered, It's okay. Believe in Longchen. As long as the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce doesn't have an Emperor Master, there won't be any problems. An ancestor? Yunmeier was stunned. Was Longchen really that strong? On the other side. I agree. Longchen stared at the red-robed judge and said, Make the decision, but I don't know if he can represent the whole Chamber of Commerce. Yes, why not? Lu Weitian couldn't stop laughing. He stared at Longchen as if he was afraid that he would change his mind. He shouted, I also agree, we will start here in 2 hours. After 2 hours, my Luyu Trading Company will send people here. The surrounding people shook their heads as they felt that Lu Weitian was a little shameless. The cauldron explosion had caused the Cloud Sea shop to lose 2 imperial emperors. Now that they were so anxious to make a judgment, it was clear that they wanted to kill Longchen. This matter was really too ruthless. The red-robed judge couldn't help but frown and confirm with Longchen again, Are you sure you want to make a judgment? Once we make the judgment, your 2 factions can do whatever you want in the designated area. Even if you die, you can't blame anyone. He emphasized the word faction a little, specially reminding Longchen that this judgment was not a matter of one person. In comparison, Longchen was at a disadvantage and his life might be in danger. Longchen still nodded after hearing this. Lu Weitian saw this and said, Since he wants to die, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and make the judgment. The red-robed judge shook his head helplessly. He waved his right hand and a red jade slip appeared in his right hand. Today, the Cloud Sea shop in the Yellow Street has made a judgment to the Xian Chamber of Commerce regarding the explosion of the cauldron. One of the representatives is Yunmeier's Dao companion and the other is the father of the vice president of the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, who is also an elder of the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. The identity check is correct. The enmity between the 2 factions is deep. The judgment will be recorded in the jade slip. Starting from noon for 3 days, you can kill at will. After 3 days, no matter what enmity you have, you can't mention it again. The judgment team will personally supervise. After that, Lu Weitian waved his hand and a great perfection monarch walked up from the side. He looked at Longchen playfully and said, Let Tianyu send 10 imperial emperors here. It's best if there are a few late-stage imperial emperors among them. After all, we are facing a late-stage imperial emperor who has just been crowned. Haha. The great perfection monarch immediately rushed out after hearing this. Longchen didn't seem to have any intention of moving. On the other side, Yunmeier wanted to help but she didn't have any imperial emperors under her command. In the end, She could only look at Jean Lanua and said, "Aren't you going to help him?" Jean Lanua shook her head and said, "Trust me. If he loses, it's useless even if I go up." The people around them were even more noisy. Is this guy willing to give up his life for a woman? Other than those useless alchemists in the Sea of Cloud shop, who else can fight? Although he's a late-stage Imperial Emperor and has been crowned, it's hard for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. 4 hands? There are more than 10 of them and all of them are late-stage Imperial Emperors. Time passed quickly. 4 hours later, people from the building Chamber of Commerce arrived. There were a total of 12 of them. The 12 of them walked to the front of the stage and bowed respectfully to Lu Weidian. "Greetings, 4th Elder. Is what they said true? The Sea of Cloud shop has just entered the Yellow Street and they dare to judge our artifacts." "Haha, what a joke. Are you kidding? The Yellow Street shop? Our building Chamber of Commerce is going to enter the Earth Chamber of Commerce." The people behind him couldn't help but laugh loudly. Lu Weidian looked at Longchen playfully and said, "This is a late-stage Imperial Emperor who has been crowned. You must treat him well." Boom! 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 Just as he finished speaking, a few middle-aged men beside him sneered and slashed at Longchen with disdain. Among the 12 of them, 5 of them were late-stage Imperial Emperors and had been crowned. Only 2 of them had slightly weaker auras while the other 3 had vast auras. The remaining 7 were at least at the 5th level of the Imperial Emperor realm. I want to see how many Imperial Emperors the Sea of Cloud shop can find to die. The leader of the group, a late-stage Imperial Emperor, sneered. Longchen looked up at the sky. The sun shone down and he said indifferently, "It's almost noon. I wonder how many Imperial Emperors there are in your Chamber of Commerce." When they heard Longchen's words, they looked at each other and didn't know what he meant. There are 30 Imperial Emperors and 13 of them are late-stage Imperial Emperors. 8 of them have been crowned. Lu Weidian suddenly snorted and shouted, "How about it? Kneel down and beg for mercy. Let that Yunmeier serve me well for a few days. Perhaps I can pretend that nothing happened today." You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.